My wife and everyone else thinks I got laid off, but really I quit, so I could make a go at being a Twitch streamer full-time. So here's something I've been keeping from almost everyone in my life, including my wife. I know it sounds bad already, but I swear I didn't do it out of malice or laziness. I did it because I genuinely thought I could make something out of it. I'm 33, been working in IT support for almost 8 years. The job was decent, steady pay, benefits, the usual grind. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't exactly living either. My wife Sarah works in education, and between the two of us, we were doing fine financially. We bought our home 3 years ago. Have a mortgage, 2 cars, no kids yet. You know, the typical suburban setup. But here's the thing. I've always loved gaming. Not just playing, but entertaining people while doing it. Back during the pandemic, I started streaming on Twitch as a hobby. It was small at first, maybe 5 viewers, some randoms, a couple of friends who tuned in to support. But I kept at it, and slowly, I started to build a small but loyal community. People would actually come back to watch me. They'd ask how my day was, laugh at my jokes, quote things I said last week. It became something I looked forward to more than anything else. Around 6 months ago, something started shifting in my head. I started to hate my job. The endless tickets, the rude clients, the pointless meetings. Meanwhile, every time I went live, I felt alive. Twitch was giving me purpose in a way the office never did. Then, in June, my company started hinting at layoffs. My boss, Greg, was cagey during team meetings. I could tell cuts were coming. That's when this insane idea popped into my head. What if I just quit before they let me go? I figured if everyone thought I got laid off, I'd get sympathy instead of judgment. Nobody would think I was stupid for chasing a dream, so I did it. I quit quietly. Told Greg I needed a break and wanted to focus on personal projects. He actually said he understood. I didn't tell Sarah right away. I waited until the company actually announced layoffs the next week. About a dozen people got let go. When Sarah came home from work that day, I told her I was one of them. She hugged me, told me it was okay, said we'd get through it together. I felt like absolute garbage lying to her, but I also felt relief. She didn't blame me, she comforted me. And then she told me to take a couple of months to breathe before job hunting again. Those couple of months became my full-time streaming period. At first, it was amazing. I went live 5 days a week, sometimes twice a day. I upgraded my setup, tweaked my schedule, learned how to edit clips for TikTok. My numbers grew fast, from 20 average viewers to 80 within 2 months. My chat was active, I was making affiliate money, and sponsorship emails started trickling in. It wasn't much, like $500 a month at best. But it felt like proof I was on the right path. The problem is, streaming is a grind. You have to be consistent, energetic, creative, all at once. The more I tried to push for growth, the more burned out I felt. I was doing 12-hour streams some days just to stay relevant. My sleep schedule went to hell. Sarah started noticing. She'd say things like, "You've been up all night again?" Or, "When are you going to start applying for jobs?" I kept deflecting. I said I was networking, building skills, seeing what's out there. She believed me because she wanted to believe in me. Then last month I got a donation from one of my regular viewers. $200. I freaked out. It felt like validation, like I'd made it. I told Sarah about it, thinking she'd be proud. But instead, she just looked worried. She asked, "Is that how you're making money now?" I lied again, said it was just a one-time thing. I thought I could keep this going longer, but the lie's getting harder to maintain. Our savings are shrinking. Sarah started looking at our finances last week and noticed my direct deposits from work stopped months ago. I told her HR messed something up after the layoff, and I was waiting for severance. That lie might buy me another week. The truth is, I'm terrified. I'm not making enough to support us. I keep thinking, just one viral clip away, but it's not coming. Every day I don't tell her the truth. The guilt gets heavier. She's talking about maybe postponing our trip to visit her parents for Christmas until I get back on my feet. I feel like a fraud. I want to tell her everything. That I quit. That I've been chasing this dream. That I thought I could turn it into something real. But how do I explain that I've been lying to her for nearly 5 months? She'll see me as irresponsible. Selfish, maybe even deceitful. The crazy thing is, part of me still believes I can make it if I just push harder. I've built a following of over 3,000 now. People actually look forward to my streams. I've had nights where donations covered half our mortgage payment. But it's not steady and I can't predict it. Last night, I stared at Sarah sleeping and almost confessed everything. I opened my mouth, but then I thought about how she'd look at me afterward. I shut up and went back to my desk. I know I can't keep this up much longer. The truth's going to come out, either from our bank statements, tax season, or me just cracking under pressure. I don't know if she'll forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it, but I also know one thing. This dream of mine, for the first time in my life, feels like me, and I'm terrified that once I tell the truth, I'll lose both the person I love and the one thing that makes me feel alive. Update: it's been about a month since I wrote that, and I wish I could say things got better, but they didn't. At least not right away. Everything I'd been trying to hide finally came crashing down, and I had to face what I'd done. It all started with a bank notification. Sarah called me while I was in the middle of a stream. My chat was popping off that day. I had nearly 120 viewers watching me play a horror game. I was in the zone, screaming at jump scares, cracking jokes, totally oblivious to what was about to happen. My phone buzzed and I ignored it at first, but it kept ringing. When I finally picked up, Sarah's voice was cold. That kind of calm that's scarier than yelling. She said, "Why did 1-800ers go to Twitch Interactive last month?" My stomach dropped. I'd been using some of our joint account money for stream upgrades. New lights, mic, overlays, a graphics designer, some sponsored ads to promote my clips. I meant to pay it back with the next month's donations, but those never came. I froze. My chat was still active, my face still on camera. I ended the stream abruptly, saying I had technical issues. When I turned off the lights and went upstairs, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Our bank statements pulled up. I tried to explain, or maybe justify, what I'd done. I told her how much the channel had grown, how close I was to partner, how I truly believed I could make it full-time. She didn't yell. She just sat there with tears in her eyes and said, "You quit your job, didn't you?" I didn't even try to deny it. I just nodded. She started crying. Not loud, just that broken kind of crying that makes you hate yourself. She asked, "How long have you been lying to me?" 5 months, that's what I told her. 5 months of pretending I'd been laid off. 5 months of hiding my choice. 5 months of using our savings without her knowing. She didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. She went to stay with her sister, Megan. The next morning I thought it was temporary, but she didn't come back that weekend. The house felt empty. I kept streaming, mostly because it was the only thing I could still do without thinking too hard. My chat noticed something was off. I wasn't as funny, wasn't as present. People kept asking if I was okay. I didn't answer. Then something unexpected happened. I got a raid from a big streamer one night. Out of nowhere, 800 people flooded my stream. I gained almost 1,500 followers in a single session. Donations poured in, and for the first time ever, I made $900 in one night. It should have felt incredible, but it didn't. I just sat there afterwards staring at the screen. All I could think was, what's the point if she's not here? A few days later, Sarah texted me asking if I could meet her for coffee. I went, hoping she might be ready to talk things through. She looked tired, not angry, just worn out. She said she'd been thinking about everything, and that she wasn't sure she could trust me again. She told me she didn't care about the money or even the quitting part. She cared that I lied, that I let her comfort me for something that wasn't true, that I let her believe we were okay when I was secretly gambling our future. I told her everything, every detail, how miserable I was at work, how alive I felt streaming, how I truly believed it could become something. I told her I didn't want to be another guy who hated his life, but stayed because it was responsible. She listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me. Chasing your dream doesn't make you a bad person. Lying about it does. We sat in silence after that. She said she wasn't sure what she wanted yet, that she needed time. She's still staying with her sister. As for me, I started picking up small IT contract work again. Remote gigs here and there to at least contribute something. I still stream, but I treat it differently now. I set limits, treat it like a side business rather than an escape. My numbers are still decent. I hit 4,500 followers last week. But my priorities have shifted. The crazy part? My viewers know something changed. They say I seem realer now, that my streams feel more grounded. I don't try to fake energy anymore. I talk about burnout, honesty, and how hard it is to balance dreams with reality. People actually appreciate it. Last weekend, Sarah stopped by to pick up some stuff. We ended up talking for almost 2 hours. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it wasn't a goodbye either. She said she saw me streaming once while she was at Megan's. She didn't comment in chat, but she said, You looked happy, I told her I was, in a way. But it wasn't worth the cost. She smiled a little at that. I don't know what'll happen next. Maybe she'll come back. Maybe she won't. Maybe Twitch will take off, or maybe it won't. But I've learned that chasing a dream isn't about lying your way into it. It's about being brave enough to pursue it honestly, even if it fails. And for the first time in a long time, I'm trying to be honest. Final update. It's been just over 6 months since everything came crashing down. Since the night Sarah found out I'd lied about quitting my job, I've thought about posting this for a while, but I wanted to wait until I had something real to say. Not just guilt or regret, but something like closure or maybe growth. So here's where things stand. After that last update, Sarah and I started seeing a marriage counselor. It wasn't her idea. It was mine. I told her I didn't expect her to take me back, but I wanted to understand how to fix what I broke, even if the fixing meant she eventually walked away. Surprisingly, she agreed. Those sessions were brutal. The therapist, a guy named Raymond, didn't let me get away with anything. Every time I said I did it because I thought, he'd stop me and ask, "What did you choose instead?" And the answer was always the same. I chose to lie instead of be honest. I chose to chase the dream the easy way, in secret. Without owning it, Sarah cried a lot those first few sessions. Sometimes she wouldn't even look at me. She said she felt like she'd been living with a stranger. She said when I lied, it made her question every other truth between us. How much I loved her, how much of our life together was real. That cut deep, but the surprising thing? She also said she finally understood why I did it. She said she'd seen glimpses of that spark in me when I streamed. Like she was seeing the man she first fell in love with, before years of work stress and burnout dulled everything. She didn't condone what I did, but she understood that I wasn't trying to run from her. I was trying to run towards something I thought I'd lost. After 2 months of therapy, Sarah decided to move back home. Not because everything was fixed, but because we agreed to start over. On new terms. With full honesty, we made one rule: no more hiding. About anything, I also made a big decision. I got a new job, not in IT support, thank God, but as a community manager for a small gaming startup. The hours are flexible, the pay is fair, and my boss actually encourages creative side projects. I told them up front about my Twitch channel, and they were cool with it. And yeah, I still stream, but it's different now. I stream 3 nights a week, not 12-hour marathons. Just 3 to 4 hours, planned, with balance. My numbers actually grew because I wasn't burning myself out. I hit Twitch partner status 2 months ago. I cried when the email came through. Not because of money or fame, but because it felt like validation. Like I'd finally earned it the right way. Sarah watched that stream. She didn't tell me at first, but I saw her username in chat, not commenting, just lurking. Afterwards, she came into my office, smiled, and said, "You really are good at this." That moment meant more than any donation or sponsor ever could. Financially, we're finally stable again. My new job covers our bills, and my Twitch income now averages around $1,200 a month. It's not life-changing, but it's something I built. Honestly, this time, we rebuilt our savings, started budgeting together, and even took that postponed Christmas trip. 6 months late, but better late than never. We still go to therapy once a month. We still have moments where trust wobbles. But there's progress. Real slow, honest progress. There was one conversation a few weeks ago that kind of wrapped it all up for me. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, and Sarah said, "I used to think your dream was reckless, but now I see it's brave. As long as you're honest about it." I told her I used to think honesty would kill my dream. Turns out it's the only thing keeping it alive. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Twitch keeps growing, maybe it doesn't. Maybe one day I'll move into full-time content creation again. But if I do, it'll be with Sarah beside me, not behind my back. Sometimes I look back at that first night, when I lied to her about being laid off. And I can't believe how far we've come since then. The old me wanted to escape reality. The new me wants to build a better one. And if there's anything I've learned through all this, it's that success isn't just about chasing a dream. It's about being someone you can look in the mirror and respect while doing it. For the first time in my life, I feel like that guy, and for now, that's enough. Stories number 2. My son's prison visits became my secret life. When I drive up to the state penitentiary every other Sunday, I can feel the judgment before I even park. The security guards, the other families, even the air seems heavy with the unspoken question, "Why are you still here?" But I go anyway, because he's my son. My name's Karen. I'm 56. And my son Ryan has been in prison for 6 years. He's serving 15 for armed robbery and assault. It still doesn't feel real saying that out loud. The day he was sentenced, I swear something in me broke. He was 22. A college dropout who fell in with the wrong people. I kept thinking it was a phase, that he'd come back from it. Instead, I watched my only child get led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. At first, I went every week. I brought money for the commissary, photos of our dog, anything that reminded him of home. My husband, his stepdad, Mark, came with me the first few times. Then he stopped. He made his choices, Mark said one Sunday morning as I grabbed my purse. You can't let him ruin your life too. We fought about it for months. Mark thought I was enabling Ryan, that visiting him was keeping me stuck in the past. He didn't say it directly, but I knew he felt ashamed. His co-workers knew, our neighbors knew. People stopped inviting us to their cookouts. I became that woman, the one whose son was a felon, but I couldn't stop going. Even when Mark told me I had to choose between our marriage or his mess, I told him there wasn't a choice to make. That didn't go over well. We separated 3 years ago. I moved into a small apartment closer to the prison. It's not much, just a 1-bedroom above a laundromat. But it's mine. My co-workers at the clinic think I'm divorced because of irreconcilable differences. None of them know the truth. I tell them I spend my Sundays helping my cousin so they won't ask questions. Ryan has changed a lot inside. He works in the prison library now. He reads everything. Philosophy, psychology, even poetry. He writes me letters every week. And sometimes they're the only thing that gets me through the week. I know people think I'm crazy for still seeing him, but I've watched him grow up in there in ways he never did outside. The thing is, not everyone in my family sees it that way. My sister Beth won't talk to me anymore. Her son, my nephew Jason, was one of the victims of Ryan's robbery. He wasn't seriously hurt, but he was there when it happened. He still has scars on his arm from hitting the ground when Ryan's friend waved the gun. Beth told me if I had any decency, I'd stop visiting. We used to be close, we raised our kids together. But after the sentencing, she told me she never wanted to see me again. I sent her letters, I called, I even showed up at her house once. She didn't open the door. I don't blame her. I blame myself. I raised Ryan. I must have missed something. Some sign that he was going down the wrong path. The hardest part is the holidays. The prison decorates the visitation room with cheap tinsel and a fake tree, like they're trying to make it cheerful. The guards are kinder that time of year, maybe because they know most inmates don't get visitors. Ryan once told me that half the guys in his unit don't get a single card, let alone a visit. I can't imagine what that kind of loneliness feels like. Last year, Ryan asked me to stop coming. He said he didn't want to be the reason I was alone, that seeing me leave every week made him feel worse. I told him that wasn't his decision to make. You're my son, I said. You'll always be my son. He didn't say anything, just stared at his hands a few months ago. I ran into Jason at the grocery store. He's 28 now, taller than I remembered. With this hard look in his eyes, he saw me, froze, then said, "You still going to see him?" I nodded. He shook his head and walked away. I stood there in the cereal aisle, holding a box of Cheerios, feeling like the worst mother and aunt in the world. Sometimes I wonder if everyone's right, that I'm stuck in denial, that I'm just clinging to what's left of him. But when I see Ryan through that glass, when he smiles, really smiles, I know why I keep going. He's still my child. I've learned to live with the whispers, the awkward silences, the bless your heart pity looks. My neighbors think I'm a lonely widow. My co-workers think I'm just private. Only I know the truth. Maybe I'm a fool for holding on. Maybe I'm selfish, but every Sunday morning, I put on my blue cardigan, pack a small bag with his favorite candy, and drive the 43 miles to see him. Because even if the world has given up on him, I can't. I don't know what that makes me. A mother, an enabler, a fool. But it's the only thing that still feels right. Update. It's been 6 months since I first wrote about visiting my son in prison. And honestly, I didn't expect anyone to care. I mostly wrote it to get it out of my chest, like a confession I couldn't tell anyone else. But since then, things have changed. Some for the better, some for the worse, and I thought I should share what happened. Shortly after that post, Ryan called me with news that knocked the wind out of me. He said he'd been accepted into a new rehabilitation and education program at the prison. It's small, only a dozen inmates, but it's meant for those who've shown consistent good behavior and are working toward re-entry. He told me he had to apply 3 times before he got in, when he said, "Mom, I finally got something right." I cried so hard he had to calm me down. He's been taking online classes through a community college partnership. English, sociology, even creative writing. He sent me one of his essays, a piece called The Shape of Regret. It was about the night of the robbery. He didn't make excuses, didn't shift blame, just wrote about the fear, the stupidity, and how easily one choice can twist your whole life. I could hardly finish reading it. It was the first time I felt like he truly understood the pain he caused. But with that progress came something else. Pressure. Ryan told me that some of the other inmates started calling him the teacher's pet, or the mama's boy with books. He tries to laugh it off. But I know how prison culture works. Standing out, even for something good, can make you a target. I worry constantly. Meanwhile, my personal life hasn't exactly been peaceful. A few months ago, my ex-husband Mark showed up at my apartment. I hadn't seen him since our separation. He said he'd heard from a mutual friend that I was still visiting Ryan and that it was time to move on. He looked older, gray in his beard, tired eyes, but his tone was the same, condescending. He told me he'd met someone, a woman named Stephanie, and that they were getting married. I told him I was happy for him, and I meant it, but then he said something that stung. He said, "You could have had a life, Karen. Instead, you chose a criminal." I didn't respond. I just opened the door and told him to leave. When he walked out, I realized that was the moment I stopped feeling guilty about choosing my son. I might not have much left. No marriage, no social circle. But I still have my integrity. Beth, my sister, reached out around Easter. It was unexpected. She sent me a short email that said, "Jason is in therapy now. He's talking about forgiving. Maybe we can." 2. That single line wrecked me. We ended up having coffee a week later at a little diner halfway between our towns. It was awkward at first. We sat there stirring our coffee, not sure what to say, but then she told me about Jason. How he's been trying to work through his trauma. How he still struggles with panic attacks. And how hearing that Ryan was in rehabilitation made him curious. Apparently, he'd been following prison reform stories online and saw a feature about the same education program Ryan joined. When I told her Ryan was part of that program, she just went silent for a long time. Then she said, "Maybe he's not the same person anymore." It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was the first time she spoke about Ryan without venom in her voice. Before we left, she hugged me. I cried into her shoulder like a little girl. Since then, we've been emailing a few times a week. We're not back to normal, but we're something close to it. I think Jason might even agree to talk to Ryan one day. Then, 2 weeks ago, something happened that brought everything full circle. The prison held a family visitation day, part of their new rehabilitation initiative. It was more relaxed than the usual visits. No glass, no phones, no strict time limits. We got to sit at tables in a big rec hall. Surrounded by guards, yes, but there was food, music, and even a small art exhibit of inmate work. Ryan looked different, calmer, more grounded. He had gained some weight, and there was a quiet confidence in how he spoke. He introduced me to his program mentor, a man named Darius, who used to be incarcerated and now runs workshops for inmates preparing for release. Darius shook my hand and said, "Your son's one of the good ones. He's doing the work." I think that's the first time anyone has said something good about Ryan in years. When the day ended and the guards started clearing people out, Ryan hugged me. Not the quick, awkward kind of hug we used to have, but one that lasted, he whispered. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Mom, I barely made it to my car before I broke down. Now, I still visit him every other Sunday. But it's different. There's hope now. He's up for a parole review next year. His lawyer says his chances are decent because of his record and participation in the program. I don't want to get my hopes too high, but I catch myself imagining it. Him walking out, eating dinner at my table, maybe starting over? People still judge me. They still whisper. But I've learned something through all this. Being a mother doesn't stop when your child fails. It just changes shape, and maybe after all this time, Ryan's finally learning to be someone worth visiting. Final update. I wasn't sure if I'd ever write another update. But so much has changed that keeping it to myself feels impossible. When I first shared my story, my world was tiny. Just me, a quiet apartment above a laundromat, and my Sunday drives to the prison. I felt like my life had shrunk to a single purpose. Being Ryan's mother now, for the first time in years, that world is starting to expand again. Ryan is home. It still feels unreal to write that. He was granted parole 4 months ago after serving 8 years of his 15-year sentence. His hearing was nerve-wracking. I wasn't allowed to speak, only to sit behind a glass wall and watch. He looked so calm, sitting there in his plain shirt, hands folded. answering the board's questions like a man who'd been waiting his whole life to be heard. They asked about the robbery, his role, the victims, his rehabilitation, his goals. He didn't try to sugarcoat anything. He said, "I destroyed trust. I hurt people. I took more than money that night. And I know I can't fix that. But I can live every day trying to make something better." When they told him he'd been approved for early release, I broke down in that cold, echoing room. It was the first time I cried from relief in years. He moved in with me temporarily because halfway houses around here have long wait lists. I was terrified at first. 8 years is a long time to be gone from the world. He didn't know how to use a smartphone, didn't understand self-checkout kiosks, and panicked when the neighbor's dog barked too loudly. The first time we went grocery shopping, he froze in the middle of the aisle. Overwhelmed by the colors and choices, I had to gently take the cart and steer him toward the exit. But every week, he gets a little better. He wakes up early, takes long walks, goes to counseling twice a week, and volunteers at a local church food pantry. The same man who once robbed a convenience store now spends his Saturdays handing out groceries to families in need. There's poetry in that. Ryan got a job last month, his first in nearly a decade. Darius, the mentor from the prison program, helped him land a position at a community library in the maintenance department. It's not glamorous work, but he loves it, he told me. "Mom, I like being around books. They saved me in there." He keeps his pay stubs in a little folder like they're medals. I've noticed something else too. His gentleness. The anger he used to carry, the defensiveness, the constant edge. It's gone. He listens now. He thinks before he speaks. There are moments when I see the boy he used to be, but older, wiser, almost peaceful. Beth and Jason came over for dinner 2 weeks ago. It was the first time all 4 of us had been in the same room since before the robbery. I spent the whole day cleaning and cooking like it was Thanksgiving. I was so nervous I kept burning things. Ryan was quiet before they arrived. Pacing, rubbing his hands together, he said, "If they walk out, I'll understand." But they didn't walk out. When Jason saw Ryan, the air in the room went still. For a second, I thought he might leave. Then Ryan stood, looked him in the eye and said, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm sorry. I think about what I did every day." Jason didn't say anything at first. Then he nodded, barely, and said, "Just don't waste the second chance you got." We ate together. It wasn't easy, but it was real. I'll never forget that night. The clinking of forks, the hesitant laughter, the first hint of normal in a family that had been broken for too long. After they left, Ryan sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Finally, he said, "I feel like I can breathe again. Life isn't perfect. I still wake up sometimes expecting the phone to ring with bad news. Ryan still struggles with nightmares. He avoids loud crowds, keeps his back to the wall in restaurants. But he's building something. We both are." Last month, he got a small tattoo on his wrist. A simple outline of a key. He told me it represents freedom that has to be earned, not given. I cried when he showed me. It's small, but it means everything. As for me, I've started volunteering at the same rehabilitation center that helped Ryan. I sit with mothers who are where I once was, ashamed, scared, heartbroken. I tell them the truth. That loving someone who's done wrong doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Sometimes people still whisper, still ask, "Aren't you embarrassed?" I just smile now. There's nothing to be embarrassed about in loving your child through darkness. Ryan's parole officer says if he keeps this up for another year, he'll be fully released from supervision. He wants to save up for a used truck, maybe start a handyman business. He even talked about applying to college someday, studying psychology. "I want to help guys like me before they screw up their lives," he said. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of it. The laundromat hums below our apartment. The scent of detergent drifts up through the floor, and I sit here writing this while Ryan hums to himself in the kitchen, cooking dinner. It's simple, peaceful, ordinary, and I've never been more grateful. If you had told me 8 years ago that I'd ever feel joy again, I wouldn't have believed you. But here it is, small and steady, sitting beside me at the dinner table. My son is home, and I think, maybe, so am I, stories number 3. My friend lost her job because of me, and I still don't know if I was wrong. I met my friend about 4 years ago at a small marketing agency in Denver. Her name's Lindsay. She was funny, outgoing, and the kind of person who could make anyone feel like they'd known her forever. We bonded pretty quickly. We both started around the same time, and we used to joke that we were cubicle twins a few months into the job. It became clear that Lindsay was one of those people who could charm her way through almost anything. She'd show up late, miss deadlines, or disappear for long lunches, but somehow she'd still get praised in meetings. I didn't mind at first. I figured everyone has off days, and I wasn't about to micromanage my friend. But as time went on, it started affecting my own work. Our projects overlapped a lot, and when she didn't pull her weight, I had to cover for her. I'd stay late fixing presentations, rewriting reports, cleaning up mistakes, stuff our manager assumed we'd done together. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem petty. Then things started getting weird. She began talking about getting side gigs during work hours, freelance projects she was doing for other companies. At first, I thought she was exaggerating, but one day I caught her designing an ad campaign for another client on her work computer. It wasn't one of ours. She brushed it off and said, "Oh, it's just a favor for a friend." I didn't think much about it until about a month later, when one of our clients asked a strange question during a call. "Hey, is your agency handling any other accounts in our industry?" Our boss looked confused. Turns out, one of Lindsay's side clients was a direct competitor of the company that paid us. She'd been freelancing for them using her work laptop, on company time, sometimes even using assets we'd built for our actual client. When I realized what was going on, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just some harmless side hustle. She was using company resources for outside work. And it could have blown up into a serious legal issue. I didn't run to HR right away. I tried talking to her first. We grabbed coffee, and I told her she should stop before someone noticed. She laughed it off and said I was too uptight. She said everyone freelanced these days and that our boss would never find out. She even joked that she'd cut me in if I ever wanted extra money. That conversation stuck with me for days. I didn't want to be the reason she lost her job, but I also didn't want to lose mine because I knew about it and said nothing. Eventually, I brought it up to my manager, Megan. I didn't accuse Lindsay directly. I just mentioned that there might be a conflict of interest happening and that she should look into it. Megan asked me for details, so I told her what I'd seen. About a week later, HR called Lindsay in. She was gone by the end of the day. No warning, no suspension, just immediate termination. Word spread fast. A few people guessed I'd had something to do with it, but I didn't say anything. That night, Lindsay texted me. "You told them, didn't you?" I didn't respond right away. She sent another. "You could have just talked to me instead of stabbing me in the back." I wanted to tell her I had talked to her. I wanted to remind her that she'd laughed in my face, but I didn't. I just said, "I'm sorry it turned out this way." She blocked me after that. For weeks I felt awful. Some coworkers quietly thanked me, saying she'd been a problem for a while. Others looked at me differently, like I'd broken some kind of unspoken rule. I tried to justify it to myself. I didn't want anyone to get in trouble. I just didn't want our team dragged down. But the guilt stuck around months later. I ran into her at a grocery store. She was polite but cold. She said she'd started freelancing full-time and was doing fine. Then she added, "Guess getting fired was the best thing that could have happened to me." But the way she said it made my chest tighten. I told her I was glad she was doing well. But when I walked back to my car, I just sat there for a while, wondering if I could have handled it differently. She was wrong for what she did, but she was also my friend. And even now, I can't tell if I was doing the right thing, or if I just couldn't stand watching her get away with it anymore. It's been about 8 months since Lindsay got fired, and I thought the whole thing was behind me. But last week, something happened that dragged it all back up. Our agency was invited to a local business conference. I went with a few co-workers and our new creative director, Ben, who joined after Lindsay left. It was a small event, mostly networking, some panels, that kind of thing. About halfway through the day, I spotted Lindsay across the room. She was standing by a booth for a new boutique marketing firm. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked more polished, confident even. I thought about ducking out, but she saw me. She smiled, actually smiled, and waved me over. I hesitated but went anyway. She introduced me to the people she was with and said, "This is my old co-worker. The reason I started my own business." She said it lightly, almost like a joke. But I couldn't tell if there was still an edge underneath. After her co-workers left, she asked if we could talk privately. We stepped outside, and she said she wanted to clear the air. I didn't know what to expect, but she surprised me. She told me that when she first got fired, she was furious. She'd blamed me for everything because it was easier than admitting she'd messed up. She said losing that job was a wake-up call. She realized she'd been coasting, cutting corners, and relying on charm instead of discipline. She told me she took a few months off, rebuilt her portfolio from scratch, and started her own small agency. Apparently, it's doing well. Then she said something that stuck with me. "You were right to say something. I just wish I'd been smart enough to listen when you tried to warn me. I didn't know what to say." I told her I never wanted her to lose her job, that I just didn't know how else to handle it when she brushed me off. She nodded and said she understood. For a moment, it felt like we'd finally put it behind us, but there was more. She mentioned that after she got fired, Megan, our old manager, had apparently used the whole incident to tighten policy across the agency. Now, everyone has to sign a new contract banning freelance work without written approval. Lindsay said a few people reached out to her afterward, blaming me for the change. I didn't even know about it. That night, I brought it up with Ben and he confirmed it was true. I hadn't realized my conversation months ago had turned into an internal audit. Apparently, the higher-ups wanted to make sure there were no other conflicts of interest, so they cracked down across the board. A couple of coworkers even lost their freelance gigs because of it. I guess that explains why some people at work still act distant with me. So now I'm in this strange place where I feel both relieved and guilty all over again. I never meant for my actions to have such a ripple effect. I wasn't trying to be the office snitch. I just didn't want to get dragged into something unethical. Lindsay and I grabbed coffee a few days later, and it felt weirdly normal. We laughed about old clients and shared a few horror stories from the agency. She told me she's hiring a few people soon, and jokingly asked if I wanted to jump ship. I told her I'd think about it, even though we both knew I wouldn't. Still, I couldn't help but respect how she turned things around. I guess what I've learned is that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it wrecks relationships, changes how people see you, and leaves a bad taste in your mouth even when the outcome looks justified on paper. But seeing Lindsay own her mistakes and grow from them made me realize it wasn't all for nothing. Maybe we both needed that fallout to figure out who we actually wanted to be at work. And as people, even so, every time someone at the office complains about the new no freelance rule, I stay quiet. I just sit there, nod, and pretend I don't know how it started. It's been almost 2 years since everything with Lindsay happened, and this will probably be the last time I talk about it. A lot has changed since then. Some good, some complicated. But I've finally made peace with how it all unfolded. After that conference and our coffee catch-up, Lindsay and I stayed in touch sporadically. A text here and there, maybe a coffee every few months. I wouldn't call us close friends again, but there's a sense of mutual respect now that didn't exist before. She's built her agency into something legitimate, with a few employees and a steady roster of clients. She even landed one of the accounts our old company used to handle, which made me smile more than I expected. She earned it this time. Work for me has been steady, but I can't deny that the fallout changed how people treat me. A few coworkers warmed up eventually, but others still keep things strictly professional. There's a quiet assumption that I'll do the right thing if I see something off, which sounds nice in theory, but really just means people are careful around me. It's like once you're seen as the person who reports something, that label sticks. At first, that really bothered me. I missed the easy camaraderie we used to have before everything blew up. But over time, I started noticing how different my approach to work had become. I'm more confident speaking up in meetings, less hesitant to set boundaries. I don't automatically cover for people anymore, or take on extra work to keep the peace. I guess when you've already lived through the worst fallout from being honest, it gets easier to keep doing it. A few months ago, I got promoted. The irony is that Megan, the same manager who had to fire Lindsay, left for another job, and I ended up stepping into part of her role. When HR told me the promotion was partly because of how I'd handled the situation with Lindsay, I had mixed feelings. I didn't want my career boost to come from someone else's downfall, but I can't deny that it changed how leadership saw me. They told me I showed integrity under pressure. I just thought I'd done what I had to do. Around the same time, Lindsay reached out again, this time for a professional reason. She wanted to partner on a small campaign that required collaboration between our two agencies. It was surreal, seeing her name pop up in a client thread after everything. We met to go over the details, and it was completely professional. Even easy, we worked well together, maybe better than before, because all the ego and unspoken resentment was gone. At the end of that project, she asked if I'd ever regretted telling HR. I didn't answer right away. Then I told her the truth. I had for a long time, but not because I thought I'd done the wrong thing. I just hated the way it broke our friendship and changed how people saw both of us. She nodded and said something that I still think about. Sometimes you have to lose a few things to get back on track. It stuck with me. Because she was right. We both lost something in that mess. Her job, my reputation at the time. But it forced us to grow up. It showed me what accountability really looks like. Now 2 years later, I don't think of it as the story where I got my friend fired. I think of it as the point where both of us stopped pretending and started taking responsibility for our choices. She learned that talent and charm don't replace ethics. I learned that doing the right thing doesn't mean it'll feel right in the moment. But it's still worth doing. The last time I saw her was at another industry event a few weeks ago. We laughed, clinked glasses, and caught up like old colleagues. At one point, someone from her team walked up and said, "You two seem like you've been friends forever." Lindsay smiled and said, "Yeah, we've been through a lot, and we have." But standing there, it didn't feel awkward or heavy anymore. Just full circle, stories number 4. My boyfriend of 2 years says he can't marry me because of something he found in my phone. I never thought something so small could blow up my entire relationship. But here I am, sitting in my apartment surrounded by half-packed boxes because my boyfriend of 2 years, well, ex-boyfriend now, said he can't move forward with me after finding something on my phone. It all started about 3 weeks ago. For context, I've been dating Ryan for 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a birthday party and hit it off right away. He's 31, works in software development, quiet but sarcastically funny once you know him. I'm also 31, a nurse, and I'd been in one serious relationship before him that ended pretty badly. Ryan was like a breath of fresh air, steady, calm, mature, the kind of guy who listened before he spoke. We moved in together last summer after a 1.5 years of dating. Things were good, normal ups and downs, but no real fights. We talked about marriage often, casually at first. Then more seriously, around Christmas, he started making comments about rings, showing me Pinterest boards of engagement ideas, even asking my opinion about elopement versus a traditional ceremony. I was sure he was planning to propose sometime this year. Then came the phone thing. It was a Saturday morning, and I was in the shower getting ready for my shift. My phone was charging on the counter. Ryan was in the kitchen making coffee. I came out, towel around my hair, and found him sitting on the bed with my phone in his hand. The look on his face made my stomach drop. I asked, "Hey, what's wrong?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Then he said, "Who's Matt?" For a second, I genuinely had no idea what he meant. Then it hit me. Matt was my ex, the one I dated in my late 20s, the one who cheated on me and left me for a coworker. I told Ryan, "He's my ex from years ago. Why?" He handed me my phone and said, "Then why were you texting him last week?" I froze, because yeah, I had texted Matt, but it wasn't what Ryan thought. Here's the backstory. A few weeks earlier, I ran into Matt's sister at the hospital. Her dad, Matt's dad, had been admitted after a stroke. I'd known him pretty well when I was dating Matt, and I'd always liked his family despite everything that happened. When she mentioned how bad things were, I told her to tell Matt I was sorry to hear about his dad and wished him well. A few days later, Matt texted me out of the blue. It was short. He said thanks for the kind words and that his dad was improving. "That's it," I replied. "I'm glad to hear that." End of conversation. That's literally all that happened. Ryan, however, had gone through my messages and saw only those 2 texts, but in his mind, that meant I was still in touch with my ex behind his back. He asked how long I'd been talking to him. I told him it was just those 2 texts, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He asked, "Why didn't you tell me he texted you?" I didn't have a great answer, honestly. I didn't think it mattered. It was such a short, harmless exchange. And I didn't want to make Ryan uncomfortable for no reason, but apparently, that was the worst possible choice I could have made, he said. "You kept it from me because you knew it would bother me." That's lying by omission. I tried explaining that I wasn't hiding it out of guilt. I just didn't think it was worth bringing up. But he didn't want to hear it. He said it made him question what else I'd decided wasn't worth mentioning. The next few days were awful. He barely talked to me, slept on the couch, and when I tried to have a serious talk, he said, "I just need space." A week later, he came home from work and sat me down. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying in the car. He said, "I can't marry someone I don't fully trust." That was the moment I realized how bad it was. He wasn't just angry, he was done. I asked him if he really thought I'd cheat on him. He said, "I don't think you cheated. I think you're capable of lying if you think it'll keep the peace. And that's worse." That line broke me. He packed a bag that night and went to stay with his brother. saying he needed to think. That was almost 3 weeks ago. Since then, we've barely talked except for logistics, rent, furniture, bills. He told me he's looking for his own place. I've gone over everything 1,000 times in my head. I didn't do anything wrong in my eyes. I didn't flirt, didn't initiate, didn't hide something ongoing, but maybe I did screw up by not mentioning it. I just didn't think a 2-line text exchange about someone's sick dad was worth turning into a big deal. My friends are split. Half of them say Ryan's being dramatic, that he's using this as an excuse to bail out before commitment. The other half say I should have been transparent from the start, that once you're talking marriage, everything matters, especially communication. I don't even know what to think anymore. Part of me wants to fight for him, to make him see that I'd never betray him. But another part of me feels like if a relationship can fall apart this easily, maybe it wasn't as solid as I thought. The weirdest thing is, I still love him. I still wake up expecting to hear him making coffee, still catch myself setting aside leftovers for him, still check my phone hoping it's him saying he wants to talk. But all I get are short, polite messages about splitting bills or canceling internet service. I keep replaying that moment, him holding my phone, looking at me like he didn't know who I was. I wish I could go back and just tell him when Matt texted. Maybe that one small act of honesty would have saved us. Or maybe this was doomed no matter what. Either way, I'm sitting here surrounded by boxes, trying to pack up 2 years of our life together into neat little piles. His favorite mug, the blanket we bought on our road trip, the plant he said I'd kill in a week that's somehow still alive. Funny how some things survive even when love doesn't. I don't know if this is the end forever, or just a pause before we figure things out. But I do know one thing. I'll never underestimate how fragile trust really is. Sometimes it's not the big betrayals that break you. Sometimes it's just a tiny, silent choice not to speak. Update. It's been 2 months since Ryan walked out that night, and the silence he left behind has been both deafening and weirdly sobering. I didn't plan to update at first because I honestly thought there'd be nothing left to say. I figured he'd move out, I'd grieve, and life would just keep going. But things never go cleanly like that, do they? He officially moved the rest of his stuff out about 3 weeks after he left. I wasn't home when he came by. We'd agreed on that. But I knew he'd been there because the place felt different afterward. His scent was gone. The little dents on his side of the couch were gone. Even the hum from his gaming PC wasn't there anymore. It felt like someone had cut a thread that held everything in place. I didn't realize how much of my routine revolved around him until he wasn't in it. Every morning, I'd wake up automatically checking my phone for his text. Every night, I'd still glance at the door around 6:30 out of habit, expecting him to walk in tired but smiling. The first couple of weeks were rough. I couldn't eat properly. I'd come home from work and just sit on the couch, staring at the half-empty living room. I started replaying every single conversation we'd ever had, every disagreement, every little thing I might have missed. I even reread our old texts, which was stupid and painful, he'd said once. I trust you more than anyone I've ever dated. That line gutted me. Eventually, I forced myself to go out again. My friend Dana dragged me to brunch, then a concert. And eventually I started feeling human again. Not better, just less hollow. Then, out of nowhere, Ryan texted me. It was a Wednesday night. The message just said, "Hey, can we talk?" My stomach flipped. I stared at it for like 10 minutes before replying. Sure. He asked if we could meet at the coffee shop we used to go to every Sunday. When I got there, he was already sitting at our usual table, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. Not angry, just worn out. We made small talk at first. Work, the apartment, mutual friends. Then he sighed and said, "I've been thinking a lot about everything." About what happened, I didn't say anything. I just waited. He said, "I overreacted, I know I did. But I also wasn't wrong about how it made me feel. That stung, but I understood." He explained that finding Matt's name on my phone wasn't about jealousy. It was about trust. He said his last relationship ended because his ex had been secretly texting someone for months. And even though it wasn't physical, it destroyed him. When he saw Matt's name on my screen, it was like reliving that betrayal all over again. For the first time, I understood where that reaction came from. He wasn't just hurt by me. He was haunted by what came before me, I told him. "You could have told me that instead of walking away," he nodded. "You're right, I didn't handle it well." I panicked. We sat there in silence for a while. Then I asked the question I'd been holding on to for weeks. "Do you still love me?" He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Yeah, I never stopped. I wish I could tell you that I ran into his arms and everything was magically fixed. But life doesn't work like that. We talked for hours that night, about what we both did wrong, what we both learned. I told him how keeping that text from him wasn't about deceit. It was about trying not to stir up something that didn't need to be stirred. But I also admitted that not telling him ended up doing exactly that. He said he wasn't ready to move back in, but he wanted to try. Slowly. Maybe start by seeing each other again, going on dates, rebuilding trust one step at a time. We agreed. Since then, it's been complicated, but better. We've been meeting up once or twice a week. Dinner, walks, a few nights at each other's places. It's awkward sometimes, like dating someone you already know everything about, but still having to re-earn their confidence. But it's also strangely refreshing. We talk more openly now than we ever did before last week. We had our first real argument since reconnecting. Nothing explosive. Just a misunderstanding about boundaries and social media. But instead of shutting down or storming off, we talked it through. He admitted his insecurity. I admitted my frustration, and we both apologized. Like adults. That might sound like nothing, but for us, it felt huge. He told me he's been seeing a therapist to deal with his trust issues. I can't even describe how proud that made me. And it pushed me to do the same. Not just for him, but for me. Because as much as I want this to work, I know I can't build a future by trying to prove I'm not someone else's ghost. Sometimes when we're sitting together again, laughing over takeout or watching some dumb show, I get this ache in my chest, part fear, part gratitude. Fear that it could still all fall apart. Gratitude that he even gave us another shot. I asked him recently if he still thinks he can't marry me. He said, not right now, but maybe someday. I just want to make sure the foundation's strong before I put anything on top of it. And honestly, I respect that. I'd rather build something slow and steady than rush into forever on shaky ground. I don't know if we'll make it in the end. Maybe we'll fall back in love fully. Maybe we'll drift apart again. But at least now, everything's out in the open. No lies, no secrets, no pretending things don't matter. Whatever happens next, I know this. I learned how fragile trust can be, but I also learned it's not impossible to rebuild. It just takes time, humility, and two people willing to try. And for the first time in months, I think we're both finally trying. Final update. It's been almost a full year since everything happened. Since the night Ryan found that text. Since we broke up. Since the long months of silence, therapy and awkward coffee shop talks. And now, looking back, it's hard to even recognize the people we were back then. The version of me that tried to avoid conflict by staying quiet. The version of him that shut down the second his fears got triggered. We were both walking on eggshells, calling it peace. I didn't plan to post again. But a lot has changed. And I mean a lot. After that last update, Ryan and I kept seeing each other. Slowly at first, coffee, long walks, an occasional dinner. It was weirdly like dating a stranger who knew all your deepest secrets. We were cautious, but also curious. Every time we talked, it felt like peeling back another layer of who we used to be. Then in the spring, something shifted. We were sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. I'd moved after the lease ended, choosing somewhere smaller, mine alone. We'd just finished dinner, and the air was warm, soft. The kind that makes you feel like maybe the world is forgiving after all. Ryan looked at me and said, I think I want to come home. I didn't say yes right away. I'd been waiting to hear those words for months, but when he said them, I realized I needed to be sure, not that he loved me, but that he trusted me again. So I told him, if you move back, it's not to fix the past. It's to build something new. He nodded and said, that's exactly what I want. He moved back in 2 months later, carefully, like we were both testing the strength of the ground beneath us. We had new rules, not the kind you'd find in a relationship book, but ones that actually worked for us. No checking each other's phones. Ever total honesty, even if the truth stings. Weekly check-ins where we talk about anything that's bothering us before it festers. It sounds clinical, but it saved us. Therapy helped too. We kept going, separately and together. I learned that I had a tendency to downplay conflict, that I confused keeping the peace with avoiding honesty. Ryan learned that trust isn't about control. It's about vulnerability. Both lessons hurt like hell, but they were necessary. Then came the moment I didn't see coming in August. We took a trip to Oregon, just a long weekend getaway. One evening, we were hiking near Crater Lake, and the sun was setting in that unreal, golden-orange way it does there. We stopped to take pictures, and when I turned around, Ryan was on one knee. I wish I could say I was shocked, but I wasn't. I think a part of me always knew we'd find our way back. Not because love conquers all or any of that movie stuff, but because we chose to keep showing up for each other, even when it was hard. He said, "I don't want to marry the version of you I imagined. I want to marry the real you." Flaws, mistakes, all of it, I cried, like full-on ugly cried. Then I said, "Yes, we're engaged now. We haven't set a date yet. We're taking it slow, on purpose. But there's no hesitation this time. No unspoken resentment, no secret doubts. Just two people who messed up, broke apart, and somehow stitched themselves back together. What's funny is, sometimes people assume our relationship must be fragile because of how it started to fall apart. But the truth? It's stronger now than it's ever been. Because it's been tested. We talk openly about that night. The text, the lies, the trust issues. Not with bitterness, but with perspective. It's become part of our story, not the thing that defines it. And as for Matt, the ex who started this whole spiral, I haven't spoken to him since that brief exchange about his dad. His father recovered, thankfully, but I made sure to keep that boundary firm. Not because I'm scared of Ryan's reaction anymore, but because I finally understand what emotional responsibility really means in a relationship. Transparency isn't about seeking permission. It's about partnership. The most beautiful thing, though. Ryan doesn't need reassurance anymore. He doesn't check in because he's suspicious. He checks in because he cares, and I don't silence myself out of fear. I speak up because I respect what we've rebuilt. Sometimes I think about that morning in our old apartment. Me in a towel. Him holding my phone, that look of betrayal in his eyes. It used to haunt me now. I see it as the day everything broke so we could rebuild it the right way. We're not perfect. We still argue sometimes. We still have to remind each other to listen before reacting. But we've learned that love isn't just about finding someone who fits your life. It's about choosing someone again and again, even when it's messy, even when it hurts. If I could go back and change how I handled that text, I would, not because it was wrong to reply, but because it was wrong to underestimate how honesty shapes trust. Now, every time we end the day, Ryan always says the same thing before turning off the lights. "Thank you for telling me the truth." And I always reply, "Thank you for believing me again." Because at the end of everything, after the heartbreak, the silence, the therapy, and the rebuilding, that's what love is. Not perfection, just truth, trust, and two people willing to start over. One honest conversation at a time. Stories number 5. My accidental cat adoption turned my life upside down. I've always been a dog person, growing up. My family had 2 golden retrievers who thought they were people. And when I moved into my own apartment, I swore I'd get a rescue pup someday. But after my breakup last year and a string of long work days at the marketing agency, I figured a dog would be too much responsibility. That's when I decided maybe, just maybe, a cat would be easier. I live in Nashville, in a small 1-bedroom apartment with creaky floors and a balcony that barely fits a chair. My friend Monica had been bugging me to adopt a pet for months, saying it would heal my soul or whatever, so one Saturday, we went to this local shelter called Whiskers and Wishes. It was packed, cats meowing from every direction, volunteers running around, and a little girl crying because a kitten scratched her finger. That's when I saw him, a sleek black cat sitting in a crate by himself, staring directly at me with these piercing green eyes. The tag on the cage said Shadow, 3 years old, male, calm and affectionate. I don't know what it was, but I instantly felt drawn to him. The volunteer, a college kid named Trevor, smiled when I asked about Shadow. He said, "Oh yeah, he's a sweetheart, likes quiet environments, would do great in a small apartment." That sounded perfect. I filled out the paperwork, paid the $75 adoption fee, and took my new roommate home. The drive back was peaceful. Shadow sat quietly in his carrier, occasionally meowing. I figured he was just nervous when I got home. I set him loose in the living room, and he strutted out like he owned the place. Within 10 minutes, he was on the couch. Purring. That night, he slept at the foot of my bed. I remember thinking, wow, this was easier than I thought. I should have known that peace wouldn't last. The first weird thing happened 2 days later. I woke up to the sound of dishes clattering in the kitchen. I rushed out, half asleep, to find Shadow sitting on the counter surrounded by broken glass. He'd somehow knocked over a mug and shredded the bag of coffee beans I'd left out. I scolded him gently, but he just stared at me with that same calm expression, almost smug. The next day, I found him sitting inside my kitchen cabinet. I have no idea how he got in. It was one of those that latches shut. When I opened the door, he hissed and darted out. I thought maybe he was just stressed from the new environment. A few days later, I got home from work to find my front door slightly open. My heart dropped. I was sure I'd locked it that morning. I panicked, thinking someone had broken in, but nothing was missing, except Shadow. I spent hours searching the apartment complex, shaking a bag of treats like an idiot around midnight. I found him crouched under my car in the parking lot, completely unbothered. When I picked him up, he scratched me hard enough to draw blood. I started to wonder if maybe I wasn't cut out for a cat, but every time I thought about returning him, I'd see him curled up on the couch, blinking at me like he owned the place, and I couldn't do it. Then, about 3 weeks in, I got a call from Whiskers and Wishes. It was a woman named Nancy, the shelter director. Her tone was panicked. She said, "I think there's been a mix-up. You adopted the wrong cat." I blinked. "What do you mean, the wrong cat?" Apparently, 2 black cats had been brought in that same week, Shadow and another named Diesel. Diesel was not calm and affectionate. He'd been surrendered for aggression and escape attempts. Somehow their cages got switched after cleaning, and I'd walked out with the feline version of a criminal mastermind. I sat there on the phone, staring at the little demon currently trying to knock a candle off my shelf, and said, "Well, that explains a lot." Nancy offered to exchange him, her words. Not mine, but I couldn't do it by that point. I'd grown attached to the chaos. Sure, he was a menace, but he was my menace. I told her I'd keep him, and she sighed with relief because apparently, Diesel wasn't exactly on anyone's wish list. Things only got weirder from there. Diesel learned how to open doors. Like, literally, he'd jump, grab the handle, and push until it swung open. I started locking my bedroom at night because I'd wake up to him sitting on my chest, staring directly into my soul. One night, I woke up to loud banging from the bathroom. When I opened the door, Diesel had somehow turned on the sink faucet and was batting at the running water like it was his new toy. He was drenched, the floor was flooded, and he looked thrilled. Monica thought it was hilarious. She came over one weekend and said, "You don't have a cat. You have a tiny criminal with fur." Still, he started to mellow out, just a little. He began following me around the apartment, chirping whenever I talked to him. He'd curl up beside me while I worked, occasionally tapping my keyboard like he was helping. Sometimes, he'd bring me random objects, hair ties, pens, even a single sock, as gifts. Then came the day I realized how much he'd actually changed my life. It was a rainy Sunday, and I'd been feeling low. Work had been brutal, and I'd barely spoken to anyone all week. I was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, when Diesel climbed up onto my lap and head-butted my chin. He started purring, loud and insistent, like he was demanding I snap out of it. I laughed for the first time in days. I think that's when I realized he'd adopted me. Now, a year later, Diesel's still here. He's mellowed. Mostly, he still opens doors, still knocks over glasses, still insists on watching me shower like some furry supervisor. But I wouldn't trade him for anything. Every night when I turn off the lights, he hops onto the bed, curls up beside me, and lets out a single, satisfied chirp before falling asleep. Sometimes I think about how I almost returned him, how I almost missed out on this ridiculous, loud, loving little creature. I guess life has a way of giving you what you need, even if it claws you on the way there. So, yeah, I didn't adopt the wrong cat. I just found the one who was meant to be mine. All chaos included. Update, I honestly didn't think I'd be back with an update. But Diesel's story, and mine, just keeps unfolding in ways I couldn't make up if I tried. Since my original post, that wrong cat has managed to completely rewrite what my home, my routines, and even my relationships look like. Let me start by saying, Diesel didn't calm down. Not even a little. He evolved. He's smarter now. He's learned how to manipulate both me and my environment with frightening precision. About 3 months after my last post, I woke up one night to a weird rhythmic thumping sound. I stumbled out of bed thinking someone was breaking in. Nope. It was Diesel, jumping repeatedly at the thermostat. Somehow, he'd figured out how to turn on the heat. It was the middle of July, and I woke up drenched in sweat because my tiny roommate wanted it tropical. The next week, I found out he could open the fridge. I came home to an entire pack of shredded turkey cold cuts on the kitchen floor, half eaten, and Diesel lying beside them like a mob boss after a successful heist. I tried putting child locks on everything, but this cat treats problem-solving like an Olympic sport. Around that same time, Monica, my best friend who'd been there the day I adopted him, started bringing her new boyfriend, Caleb, around. Caleb isn't a cat person, and Diesel knew. He hissed at him every time, once even swatting his car keys off the counter. At first, I scolded Diesel. But after Caleb made a snide comment about me being the crazy cat lady with commitment issues, I looked at Diesel and said, "You know what, buddy? Scratch away." Needless to say, Caleb didn't last. In the middle of all this chaos, something strange happened. People online somehow found my post about adopting the wrong cat and started sharing it. Apparently, it made its way to a pet blog, and within weeks, I had hundreds of comments and messages from people saying Diesel reminded them of their own chaotic rescues. Some even sent me pictures of their criminal cats. Someone made a meme of Diesel labeled Agent of Chaos. Level 100. I laughed so hard I cried. That's when an idea hit me. I started posting short clips of Diesel's daily destruction on TikTok, just for fun. Him opening doors, stealing socks, trying to catch ice cubes. The videos blew up overnight. People loved him. One video of him turning on the faucet got over 1 million views. Suddenly Diesel had fans. I called it the Diesel Diaries. It felt silly at first, but it gave me something to do outside of work. Between managing a demanding job and living alone, I hadn't realized how lonely I'd been until Diesel and his growing online following filled my days with something light-hearted. I'd spend evenings editing little clips, adding dramatic music as Diesel plotted his next misdeed. People commented things like, "This cat is possessed," and "He's just misunderstood," and I found myself smiling more than I had in years. Then one day, I got an email from Whiskers and Wishes, the same shelter where this whole thing began. Nancy, the director, thanked me for the videos because they'd led to a surge in adoptions. People were walking into the shelter saying, "I want to adopt my own Diesel," she asked. If I'd like to come to their annual fundraiser to share our story, I went. Standing there in that same building where I'd once nervously signed papers for the wrong cat, I talked about how Diesel had turned my quiet, lonely life into something chaotic, funny, and unexpectedly full. They played a slideshow of his antics, and the crowd laughed at every clip. Then, at the end of the event, a woman came up to me, probably in her 60s, sweet smile, soft voice. She said, "I saw your videos after I lost my husband." I hadn't laughed in months. Diesel helped me smile again. I think that's when it hit me that this story wasn't just mine anymore. At home, Diesel was still, well, Diesel, a few months ago. He somehow managed to escape onto the balcony and jump to the neighbors. I had to knock on their door in my pajamas at 11 p.m., apologizing while Diesel sat smugly on their counter eating their leftover rotisserie chicken. They thought it was hilarious. We ended up chatting for an hour, and now, ironically, those neighbors, Ben and Alyssa, are two of my closest friends. Diesel actually likes them. He's also mellowed in weird, specific ways. He doesn't scratch the furniture anymore. But he will knock my phone off the counter if I ignore him too long. He still opens doors, but now it's mostly just to follow me into rooms. Sometimes, when I'm working, he curls up next to me and puts a paw on my arm like he's reminding me to take breaks. The biggest change? I met someone. No, not through the shelter or the cat videos, through work. Of all places, his name's Ethan, and he's quiet, funny, and ridiculously patient. The first time he met Diesel, he crouched down, offered a treat, and said, "Hey, little dude, I hear you're famous." Diesel sniffed his hand, blinked, and then headbutted him. I swear I almost cried. That was the first time Diesel ever accepted someone new. Now, a year later, the three of us have our own rhythm. Ethan stays over sometimes, and Diesel curls up between us like a small furry referee. The chaos hasn't disappeared. It's just turned into a different kind of comfort. Sometimes I think back to that day at the shelter and wonder what would have happened if I'd picked the right cat. The calm one, the one who wouldn't have broken glasses, shredded curtains, or accidentally turned me into a cat influencer. But I know the answer. My life would have been quieter, and a whole lot emptier. Diesel still wakes me up at 5 a.m. by knocking over my alarm clock. He still steals my hair ties. Still refuses to drink from his water bowl unless it's freshly refilled. But every night when I sit on the couch, he jumps into my lap, purrs like an engine, and I realize that the chaos he brought also brought joy, community, and love. So yeah, I adopted the wrong cat, but it turns out the wrong cat gave me the right life. Final update. When I first wrote about accidentally adopting the wrong cat, I never imagined that story would still be part of my life this far down the road. What started as a mistake, a chaotic blur of broken mugs and clawed curtains, somehow grew into something that shaped my home, my career, and even my heart. Diesel is still here. Older, fluffier, just as opinionated, but different. He's not the wild little anarchist I brought home that first week. He's grown into a creature of balance, half troublemaker, half guardian. Sometimes I look at him lounging in the sunlight, eyes half closed, and think, "You're the best disaster that ever happened to me." The story of the Diesel Diaries didn't end with viral videos. About a year after the last update, a small publishing company reached out. They wanted to make a lighthearted illustrated book about Diesel's antics, based on the clips I'd posted. I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but it turned out to be real. I worked with an illustrator named Harper, an absolute genius who somehow captured Diesel's signature, "I do what I want" glare perfectly. The book came out under the same title, and to everyone's shock, especially mine, it sold well, not bestseller level, but enough to raise some money. Half the proceeds went to Whiskers and Wishes, the shelter that accidentally gave me the wrong cat in the first place. They used it to build a new playroom for their rescues, and named it Diesel's Den. I went to the ribbon-cutting ceremony, and stood there watching kids giggle while kittens tumbled over each other. And I thought about that scared, misbehaving cat I'd taken home 3 years ago. If I hadn't, none of this would have happened. Ethan and I moved in together last year. It was a big step, and I was nervous about how Diesel would handle it. He'd always been territorial, especially with men, but Ethan had long since earned his approval. The first night we unpacked boxes in our new place, a little 2-bedroom townhouse with big windows and hardwood floors. Diesel strutted in like he owned it. Within an hour, he'd already claimed the top of the fridge as his throne. Now, every morning, the three of us have our little ritual. Ethan makes coffee, I open the curtains, and Diesel hops up on the window ledge to watch the neighborhood. The sunlight hits his black fur just right, and I swear he glows. It's peaceful. Something I never thought I'd have again after my breakup years ago, and the quiet loneliness that followed. But the biggest surprise came this spring. One of my TikToks went viral again. This time a simple clip of Diesel sitting in a box that said "Returns" on the side, with the caption, "Still waiting for the shelter to take me back." It blew up beyond anything before. Millions of views, interviews, emails from rescue groups. People started sending stories about their own wrong pet adoptions that turned out right. I cried reading some of them. There was a woman in Ohio who adopted a parrot that swore constantly, but ended up being her best companion after a divorce. A man in Florida who rescued a one-eyed pit bull and said it gave him his first real sense of responsibility. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a cat. It was about second chances. So I started something new, with Ethan's help. I launched a small nonprofit called Second Tail. It's dedicated to helping overlooked or difficult shelter animals find homes. We post their stories online, honest, messy, funny, real, and help cover adoption fees for people willing to take a chance. In our first 6 months, we helped over 60 animals find homes. Every one of them came with quirks: a deaf cat, a 3-legged dog, a parrot that only sings 80s music. The best part? Diesel is the face of it all. His grumpy little mug is on our logo. Life has settled into a rhythm I never thought I'd know. I still work in marketing, but part-time now. The rest of my time goes to Second Tail, the Diesel Diaries social pages, and community events. Ethan's been unbelievably supportive. He even built Diesel his own outdoor cat patio, complete with a tiny hammock. Diesel sits out there like a king surveying his kingdom. Every now and then, people recognize me in public. "You're Diesel's mom, right?" they ask, smiling. I laugh and nod, and they show me pictures of their cats or dogs or hamsters that they found through Second Tail. It's surreal. I used to think my life was small, that I'd messed up too many times to build something meaningful again. But somehow through fur, scratches, and chaos, it's grown into something beautiful. Not everything has been easy, though. Diesel's getting older. He's around 6 now, and the vet says he's starting to develop mild arthritis. The first time I noticed him limping slightly after jumping off the counter, I panicked. I wrapped him in a blanket and cried while Ethan reassured me we'd manage it. Now Diesel has soft steps by the windows and heated pads he loves to curl up on. He's still playful, just in a slower, wiser way. The other day, I caught him doing something he hasn't done in years. He brought me one of my socks again. He used to do that when I first adopted him, back when he was trying to get my attention 24/7. I think it was his way of saying, "Hey, I'm still here. Don't forget me." I picked him up, kissed his head, and whispered, "How could I ever forget you, buddy?" When I think back to that day at the shelter, the chaos, the mistake, the confusion, I realize that it wasn't really a mistake at all. It was the universe handing me the lesson I didn't know I needed, that sometimes What feels wrong at first might just be the beginning of everything, right? Now, as I write this, Diesel's curled up beside me, purring softly. The rain's tapping on the windows, Ethan's humming in the kitchen, and there's this deep, quiet happiness in the air. I used to believe I was saving him, but really he saved me from loneliness, from routine, from a version of myself that thought life had already passed her by. So if anyone ever asks me whether I regret adopting the wrong cat, I'll just smile and say, there was never a wrong cat. There was just Diesel, and he turned out to be exactly the right kind of chaos my life needed. Stories number 6. My husband expected me to take care of his sick mom while he worked nights, and it broke something between us when I married my husband, Ethan. I thought I was signing up for a partnership. We'd been together 6 years before tying the knot, and even though we'd had the usual ups and downs, I really believed we understood each other. But this last year has tested us in ways I didn't see coming. Ethan's mom, Carol, has always been complicated. She's not mean exactly, but she's never been easy to please. She raised Ethan alone after his dad left, and I think part of her still sees him as her whole world. When we first started dating, she made little comments that rubbed me the wrong way. Things like, "I hope you know how much he's given up for you," or "He's all I've got." At the time, I brushed it off. I figured she was just protective. Fast forward to earlier this year, Carol got really sick. She had pneumonia that turned into lingering complications. She was in and out of the hospital for a few weeks, and when she was discharged, the doctors recommended someone stay with her until she fully recovered. Ethan immediately volunteered us. He didn't even ask me first. I came home from work one evening, and he just said, "Mom's coming to stay for a while. She needs help, and you're home during the day, so it makes sense." I froze. I work from home, yes, but that doesn't mean I sit around doing nothing. I have meetings, deadlines, and projects that take up most of my day. When I tried to explain that, he brushed it off like it was a minor inconvenience. She just needs someone to check on her, make sure she eats, takes her meds, that kind of thing. It's not a big deal. Except it was a big deal. Carol moved in 2 days later with a full suitcase. A pillow she insisted was the only one she could sleep on, and enough complaints to fill a book. From the moment she arrived, she treated our house like it was hers. She'd rearrange the kitchen cabinets, critique how I folded laundry, and make backhanded comments about my modern cooking because apparently, quinoa is rabbit food. The first week was rough, but manageable. Then Ethan switched to the night shift at work, which meant I was alone with her all day and most evenings. Suddenly, her care became entirely my responsibility. I had to make her breakfast, remind her to take her pills, keep her company, and drive her to doctor appointments. If I tried to focus on work, she'd get offended, she once told me. "You sit on your computer all day like a teenager. It wouldn't kill you to talk to me." When I brought it up to Ethan, he got defensive. He said I was overreacting and that his mom wasn't that bad. He even accused me of not being empathetic enough, which really stung. I told him I wasn't a nurse. I didn't sign up to be a caregiver, especially not when I was already juggling a full-time job. One night, after another long day of dealing with Carol's snide remarks and nonstop demands, I snapped. She had called me lazy because dinner wasn't ready at 6 sharp. I'd been on back-to-back Zoom calls since 9 that morning and hadn't even had lunch yet. I told her I wasn't her maid, and that she could make herself something if she was hungry. She looked stunned, then started crying, loudly. When Ethan came home that night, she'd already filled his head with her version of the story. He didn't even ask for my side, he just said, "You know she's sick, right? You could have shown some compassion." That was it for me. I felt like I was being treated as the villain in my own home. The next morning, I packed a small bag and went to stay with my sister, Megan. I told Ethan I needed a break. He didn't stop me for the first 2 days. I didn't hear from him at all. When he finally called, his tone had shifted. He said he hadn't realized how much I'd been doing until Carol asked him to make breakfast, and he couldn't even find a pan. He apologized, kind of. But he still said, "You know she's family. We can't just abandon her." I told him that caring about someone doesn't mean sacrificing your own sanity. Carol eventually moved in with Ethan's aunt, who lives about an hour away, and offered to help. Things settled down after that. But something between Ethan and me still feels off. Like the trust cracked a little. He's trying. He really is. But I can't shake the resentment. Every time he thanks me for stepping up, it just reminds me that I was pushed into it without a choice. And every time Carol calls, I find an excuse not to come to the phone. I love my husband, but I learned something I can't unlearn. When it came down to it, he didn't have my back. He chose what was easiest for him, even if it meant putting me in an impossible position. Sometimes I wonder if our marriage can bounce back from that. It's been about 6 months since Carol moved out, and I finally feel like I can breathe again. The house feels quiet, in a way I didn't realize I missed. Like I can actually hear myself think. But even with her gone, things between Ethan and me haven't gone back to normal. Not completely. At first, we both pretended everything was fine. We'd tiptoe around the subject whenever his mom called or whenever he worked late, and I happened to cook dinner for one. But the tension sat there, quiet but constant. Like background noise you can't tune out. One night, about 2 months after Carol left, Ethan came home from work looking tired and said, "We need to talk." I was ready for a fight, but instead, he admitted he'd been avoiding the topic because he knew he'd messed up. He told me he felt guilty for putting everything on me. That he'd been scared to handle things with his mom because she's always made him feel responsible for her happiness. That was probably the most honest conversation we'd had in years. He said something that stuck with me. It's like she trained me to believe that if I didn't take care of her, I was failing as a son. I told him I understood, but that he'd forgotten he was also a husband now, and that I needed a partner. Not someone who outsourced all the emotional labor to me. He listened. Really listened for once. He didn't try to defend himself or say I was being unfair. I could see it hitting him piece by piece, that I'd been drowning while he'd been trying to keep the peace with his mom. After that, he started making changes. He switched back to a daytime schedule. Said he wanted to be home in the evenings again. We started having dinner together every night, even if it was just takeout on the couch. He took over calling his mom instead of handing me the phone. Small things, but they mattered. Then, a few weeks later, Carol had another health scare. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that she needed someone to stay with her for a week. Ethan told me before he made any decisions this time. He said, "I'll go stay with her, but I won't ask you to. You've done enough." That honestly floored me. It was the first time he'd ever drawn that line himself. He packed a bag and stayed with her, checked in with me every day, and never once complained. When he came back, he told me it had opened his eyes. He said she'd guilt-tripped him the entire time, made comments about how wives come and go, but mothers are forever. And he finally saw what I'd been trying to tell him, that she uses guilt like a weapon. I think that week changed him when he got home. He looked worn out but lighter somehow. He said, "I love my mom, but I can't keep letting her treat me like I'm still her little boy." Since then, things have actually felt steady for the first time. We're on the same side instead of opposite ends of a constant argument. We've even started talking about therapy, both couples and individual, because, honestly, this situation dragged out a lot of old stuff we never dealt with. The funny part is, Carol still calls, but now she talks to me differently. She's almost polite. I think she realizes that if she wants to keep her son in her life, she has to go through me too. We're not close, and I doubt we ever will be, but at least there's mutual civility now. I won't lie. It took me a while to stop feeling angry at Ethan. For months, even after he apologized, I'd catch myself replaying how alone I felt when he sided with her. I'd start a conversation with him, and then stop myself because I didn't trust my own tone. It's only recently that I've started letting some of that go. I've also learned to speak up faster. Before, I used to hold everything in until it exploded. Now, if something feels off, I say it right away. I think Ethan appreciates that, even if it means a few uncomfortable talks. The other night, we were watching TV and he turned to me out of nowhere and said, "You know, I don't think I ever told you thank you for what you did for her, even when it wasn't fair to you." It caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say except, "Just don't make me do it again." He laughed, but I think we both knew I wasn't really joking. I'm not sure if what we went through made our marriage stronger or just stripped it down to what it really is. Maybe both. What I do know is that it changed the way I see partnership. It's not about love being enough. It's about respect being constant. And now, when people talk about taking care of family, I think of those long days in my own kitchen, trying to juggle work and resentment while a sick woman criticized my cooking. It taught me a boundary I'll never cross again. I can care, but I don't have to carry. It's been almost a year since everything with Carol, and I think this might finally be the last time I talk about it. Life looks a lot different now, and honestly, I didn't expect we'd get to this place. After that week Ethan spent taking care of his mom, things really did start to shift. He followed through on the therapy idea. He booked a couples counselor without me having to nag, and we went every Thursday night for 3 months straight. It wasn't easy, The first few sessions were tense. I think we both came in carrying a lot more resentment than we wanted to admit. I told him how abandoned I felt, how it wasn't just about his mom. It was about how quickly he dismissed me, like my exhaustion didn't matter. He said he hadn't realized how much I'd been trying to hold everything together until it was too late. He admitted that when it came to his mom, guilt had always made him act out of fear instead of reason. For the first time, I really believed he understood me. The counselor helped us rebuild things from a quieter place. She told Ethan something that stuck with both of us. You can love your mother and still protect your marriage. It sounds so simple, but it was like flipping a switch for him. After that, he started setting actual boundaries with Carol. When she called to complain, he stopped jumping to fix it. When she hinted about moving in again, just for a bit, he told her no. And he didn't even look at me for backup. For the first time, I didn't have to be the bad guy. Meanwhile, I had to deal with my own stuff too. I realized I'd spent years putting other people's comfort above my own, trying to keep the peace instead of standing my ground. Therapy helped me untangle that. I started making small changes, shutting my work laptop at a reasonable hour, saying no when I needed to, taking weekends for myself without guilt. It's amazing how different life feels when you stop apologizing for needing space. Carol and I still see each other occasionally, but it's on my terms now. She's living with her sister full-time, and she's in better health when we visit. She's cordial, sometimes even warm, but I keep things polite and surface level. I've stopped chasing her approval, and that's been freeing. I think she senses the shift too, because she doesn't test my patience the way she used to. Ethan and I are good, really good actually. We found a rhythm again. We cook together most nights, something we never used to have time for. Sometimes he jokes about how quiet the house feels without his mom's commentary. And I tell him that's exactly how I like it. But I'll admit, the experience left its mark. There are still moments when something small will trigger that old feeling. The sound of the phone ringing late at night, or when he mentions visiting his mom, and I tense up before reminding myself things are different now. Healing doesn't look like forgiveness all at once. It's a slow, steady unlearning. A few weeks ago, Ethan surprised me by planning a small weekend trip to the mountains. Just the two of us. No work, no family, no obligations. On the drive up, we talked about everything we'd been through. And he said something I don't think I'll ever forget. You were right when you said love isn't enough, he told me. It's what you do when it's hard that counts. It hit me how far we've come. From feeling invisible in my own home to actually being heard. From being his mother's caretaker to being his equal again. Carol called while we were on that trip. For the first time, Ethan didn't answer. He looked at the screen, then set his phone face down and smiled at me. She can wait, he said. And I realized that tiny gesture meant more than any apology he could have given. When we got home, I found a note he'd left on my desk before we left. It said, "Thanks for not giving up on me when I was too scared to stand up for us." It made me cry. In the best way. Because I almost did give up. I was so close to walking away from all of it. The house, the marriage, the constant pressure to be the bigger person. But somehow, we found a way to meet in the middle. Not perfectly, but honestly. Now, when I think back to that awful stretch of time, I don't just remember the stress or the arguments. I remember what came after. The work, the boundaries, the rebuilding. And as hard as it was, I wouldn't erase it. It taught me that marriage isn't about keeping the peace at any cost. It's about standing your ground together. Even when it's uncomfortable, Carol still calls every few days. And I still keep the conversations short. Ethan handles most of it now, and he never assumes I'll step in. I don't feel guilty anymore for protecting my time, my space, or my sanity. I think that's the real closure here. Not that everything's perfect, but that I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine to carry. Stories number 7. My mom got mad when I told her why she really had kids. I 29F grew up in a house where everything looked perfect from the outside. White picket fence, tidy lawn, family photos and matching sweaters every Christmas. But if you looked close enough, you'd see the cracks. My mom, Denise, was one of those women who loved the image of motherhood more than motherhood itself. She always had this way of making her kids part of her identity, not her life. Like we weren't people, just proof of how selfless she was. I have 2 siblings. My older brother Tyler, 32M, and my younger sister Haley, 25F. Tyler's the golden child, successful, married, new homeowner, and the living embodiment of what Mom calls a reflection of good parenting. Haley is the baby, the sweet one, who can do no wrong. Then there's me, the one who moved away, doesn't call enough, and acts like she's better than the family. For context, I left our small Pennsylvania town right after college and moved to Denver for work. My mom took it personally. Every time I came home, she'd say things like, "You'd think with everything we did for you, you'd visit more." Or, "Some people forget who raised them once they get a nice apartment and a fancy job." I brushed it off for years, but this summer, things exploded. It started when my mom insisted we all come home for her birthday weekend. She wanted all her babies under one roof. I hadn't been home in nearly a year, so I figured it would be nice to see everyone. I even took extra days off work. When I got there, though, it was immediately tense. She criticized my haircut so short, it's not feminine. Asked how much money I made. "You must be doing well if you can afford those nails." And commented on how I still don't have a boyfriend. At one point, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I just don't understand how you can be so smart and still not have someone. You're not getting younger." Honey, I felt my face burn, but I bit my tongue. I always do. Later that night, after dinner, the wine started flowing. My mom got emotional, going on about how lonely she is now that we're all grown. Then she turned to me and said, "I just don't understand why you're so cold. You act like you don't need anyone. You don't even call me anymore," I told her. "Mom, I call." "You just make me feel guilty every time I do." That set her off. "Oh, please, I gave up everything for you kids," she snapped. "You wouldn't have your nice job or your precious independence if it weren't for me. I had 3 kids so I'd never be alone. And look at me now. Alone anyway." Something in me cracked. "Exactly," I said. "You had kids so you wouldn't be alone. Not because you actually wanted to be a mom." The room went silent. Tyler froze mid-sip. Haley's eyes went wide. Mom stared at me like I'd slapped her. "What did you just say?" I took a deep breath. "You had kids because you needed people to love you, not because you wanted to love anyone else?" Her face twisted. "How dare you? You guilt us for growing up. You don't even know who we are outside of how we make you look. You treat us like props. You had kids for company, not family." She started crying, like full-on sobbing, and stormed off to her room. My brother muttered, "You went too far, Jess." Haley just whispered, "She's been waiting to hear that." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to apologize for how I said it. But not what I said. Mom refused to talk to me when I left. She hugged Tyler and Haley but wouldn't even look at me. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've texted her twice. Short, polite messages about checking in. She read them but didn't reply. Tyler says I owe her a big apology because I humiliated her. Haley told me quietly that what I said was harsh but true. It's weird. I've spent most of my life trying to make peace with my mom, but for the first time, I feel free. I love her. But I finally see her for who she is. Someone who wanted love without having to earn it. A few weeks ago, I got a call from my aunt. My mom's sister. She told me my mom has been talking about how ungrateful I am, saying she doesn't know if she can forgive me. My aunt asked if I really told her she shouldn't have had kids. I said, no. I told her why she did have them. The silence on the line said everything. Since then, I've been thinking a lot about motherhood and what it means to choose it. My mom's entire identity was built around being needed. And when we stopped needing her, she didn't know who she was. I can't hate her for that. But I also can't carry it anymore. Last week, Haley called and said Mom wants to host Thanksgiving and would appreciate it if I showed up and didn't cause drama. I laughed and told her I'm not planning to start anything. But I also won't pretend everything's fine. Maybe one day, Mom and I will have a real conversation, one where she doesn't play the martyr and I don't play the rebel. But until then, I think space is the only thing that's honest. Sometimes love means distance. Sometimes being a daughter means saying the thing no one else will say, even if it breaks something that can't be fixed. And maybe, just maybe, that's okay. Update. It's been about 5 months since I posted about what happened with my mom, the whole why she had kids thing. And honestly, I didn't think I'd ever write an update. I figured things would just stay cold and awkward forever. But life has a funny way of dragging you into the conversations you're avoiding. After that blow-up, we didn't talk for months. My texts went unanswered. Holidays came and went, and even though my siblings still had contact with her, they kept me out of the loop. Tyler stopped calling altogether after telling me I shouldn't have psychoanalyzed Mom like a therapist. Haley checked in now and then, but even she was careful not to mention Mom too much, like she was afraid of picking sides. Then, in February, out of nowhere, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my mom. She sounded small. That's the only way I can describe it. Her voice was shaky, almost like she wasn't sure if I'd even pick up. She said, "Hi, Jess, don't hang up, okay?" I said. I wasn't going to. There was a pause. Then she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said." I waited, heart pounding. She continued, "I hate how you said it, but I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe there's truth there. I don't know. But I miss you." It hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to stay guarded, to tell her she couldn't just call after freezing me out for months. But all I could say was, "I miss you too." We talked for almost 2 hours, about nothing, and about everything. She told me she's been seeing a therapist that shocked me. Apparently, Haley convinced her after a pretty intense family dinner where Mom broke down crying about how her kids don't love her anymore. Her therapist, according to Mom, asked her to write letters to each of us, explaining how she sees our relationships. When I asked if she'd actually written one for me, she laughed nervously and said, "It's more like a novel, but I haven't sent it. I didn't think you'd read it." I told her to send it. A week later, a thick envelope showed up in my mailbox, addressed in her familiar cursive. I didn't open it right away. It sat on my kitchen table for 2 days, taunting me. When I finally read it, I had to stop halfway through because I was crying too hard. It wasn't perfect. There were plenty of excuses and deflections. "I didn't mean to make you feel guilty. I only wanted you to call because I love you. You've always been so independent it scared me." But buried in all that were a few raw admissions I never thought I'd hear from her. She wrote, "You're right that I had kids because I didn't want to be alone. I thought having children meant I'd never have to feel empty again. I didn't understand that I needed to love myself before I could love you the right way." She also admitted that when I moved away, it felt like abandonment, and that she resented me because I did what she was too afraid to do. Build a life outside of family expectations. It was the first time she'd ever taken accountability for anything. I called her after finishing the letter. She answered on the first ring. We both cried, messy, ugly tears. And for once, neither of us tried to win the argument. We've been rebuilding things since then. Slowly, I flew home in March. Not for a holiday or a birthday, but just to spend a weekend with her. It was awkward at first. She hovered too much, kept asking if I wanted something to eat, or if I was bored. But then on the second night, we sat in her living room, drinking tea, and she said something that stuck with me. "You were right. I thought being a mother would fill the holes in me. But it just made them deeper when you all started to grow up." I didn't even know how to respond. I just reached over and took her hand. It was the first time I'd done that in years. Haley came by the next day. And it was the first time the three of us had been in a room together since her birthday last year. It was nice, uncomfortable at times, but peaceful. Tyler didn't come. He's still keeping his distance, saying he doesn't want to get in the middle of the drama. Whatever, I'm not pushing it. Since that trip, Mom and I have started having weekly phone calls. Sometimes they're short, sometimes we talk for hours. She still says things that make me roll my eyes. "When are you going to give me grandbabies?" But I can tell she's trying to be more self-aware. She's learning to listen, not just react. She told me her therapist helped her realize that she had her kids to fix a loneliness that wasn't our job to heal. She said, "I'm sorry I made you responsible for my happiness. You were just a kid." That one sentence undid a decade of resentment. A few weekends ago, I flew her out to Denver for a visit. She met my friends, saw my apartment, and, to my surprise, didn't criticize a single thing. Instead, she said, "I can see why you love it here. You built something for yourself." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing to one I needed. I don't think we'll ever have a picture-perfect relationship. There's too much history, too many things that were said in anger. But now it feels like we're finally two adults trying to understand each other, instead of a mother and daughter trying to win. Sometimes when we talk, she slips back into her old habits, guilt-tripping, subtle jabs. But I've learned how to set boundaries without anger. I just say, "Mom, that's not fair." And she usually catches herself and apologizes. I can tell she's genuinely working on it. She even told me she started volunteering at a community center because, in her words, "I need to learn how to give without expecting anything back." That floored me. There's still tension with Tyler. He thinks Mom's rewarding me for being the difficult child. But honestly, I'm done trying to manage everyone's feelings. For once, I'm just focusing on mine. This whole thing made me realize that honesty can feel cruel in the moment, but still be the kindest thing you ever do for someone. If I hadn't said what I said, I think Mom would still be stuck in that self-pitying loop. And maybe I'd still be trying to win a game where the rules always changed. Now, when I think back to that night, her crying, me shaking, the silence afterward, it doesn't fill me with guilt anymore. It feels like the beginning of something that had to break before it could be built right. We're not there yet, not completely, but for the first time in my life, I feel like my mom actually sees me. Not the daughter she imagined, not the rebel, not the disappointment, just me. And that honestly feels like more than enough. Final update. It's been almost a year since I last wrote about my mom and everything that came after that blowout conversation. The one where I told her she only had kids because she didn't want to be alone. At the time, I thought that was the end of our relationship. I really did. But somehow, it turned out to be the start of the most honest one we've ever had. When I think about who my mom was before all this, how tightly she held on to the idea of being needed, how she couldn't go 5 minutes without making everything about her sacrifices. It's surreal how much she's changed. Not completely, of course. Some parts of her will always be that person, and I've made peace with that. But she's softer now. It all came full circle this past summer. She turned 60, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't demand that we all come home. She just texted us. "No pressure, but I'm having a small dinner at the house if anyone wants to come." I almost didn't, not because I didn't want to see her, but because I didn't want to ruin the progress we'd made by dredging up the past. But Haley called and said, "You should come. She's different this time." So I went. When I pulled up to the house, it was the same. The white fence, the garden full of overwatered flowers, the same wind chimes that have been there since I was 10. But the energy was different. Mom greeted me with a hug. Not a critique. No comments about my hair, my weight, my job, or my biological clock. Just, "I'm really glad you came." Inside, she'd cooked dinner herself. Nothing fancy, just her famous chicken casserole and some roasted vegetables. Tyler was there with his wife, Megan, and Haley brought her boyfriend, Sam, for the first time in years. We all sat at that dining table and ate without a single argument. At one point, Mom raised her glass and said, "I want to thank you all for still showing up. Even when I didn't make it easy to." Tyler teared up. Haley smiled. I just sat there quietly, letting it sink in. After dinner, when everyone was outside having dessert, Mom asked me to come upstairs. I followed her, half expecting another heart-to-heart, where she'd backtrack or guilt-trip me somehow. But instead, she handed me a small wooden box. She said, "I've been meaning to give you this for a while. I found it when I was cleaning out your old room." Inside was a pile of old Polaroids. Me, Tyler, and Haley as kids. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, random backyard moments. But underneath the photos, there was an envelope. I opened it and found a single-page note written in her handwriting. It said, "I used to think being a mother meant giving my kids everything I never had, but you taught me it's about giving them the freedom to be who they are, even when that means letting go. I hope someday you'll see that I really did love you. Even when I didn't know how to show it, I cried right there in her room, like a kid again, and she hugged me. Not the stiff, performative hug she used to give for photos, but a real one, the kind where she didn't let go first. Since that night, something shifted between us. Our relationship finally feels equal, not transactional, not laced with unspoken resentment. Just two women trying to understand each other. She still has her moments. Old habits don't die easily. Sometimes she slips into guilt mode and says things like, "You never know how hard motherhood is until you're one." I used to argue when she said that. Now I just nod and say, you did the best you could, and I mean it, because she did. Maybe not the best version of motherhood, but the best version she was capable of at the time. Tyler eventually came around too, after seeing how much she'd changed. He called me to apologize for being distant. He said, I think I was mad at you because you said the thing I was too afraid to say. That hit hard. Now we talk more than we have in years. Haley and I have gotten closer too. She's engaged now, and Mom's been surprisingly chill about it. No overbearing planning. No guilt-tripping about who's paying for what. Just happiness. It's wild to see. Mom even made a joke the other day. She said, I guess therapy works, who knew? And laughed. She's still seeing her therapist every 2 weeks. And she told me she's been helping out at the community center regularly. Apparently, she mentors younger moms now. She said one of them told her, you remind me of my mom, but like, evolved. And she couldn't stop laughing about it. We spent Thanksgiving together this year. All of us under the same roof for the first time since before the fight. It was peaceful. No drama, no tension, just family. After dinner, when we were cleaning up, Mom turned to me and said quietly, you know, that night you said I had kids so I wouldn't be alone. I used to hate you for it, but now I think it saved me. I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her. It's strange. The thing that once shattered our relationship has become the thing that rebuilt it. That conversation, as brutal as it was, forced both of us to face the truth. I learned that setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad daughter. It makes me an honest one. And she learned that love isn't control, or guilt or obligation, it's choice. The distance between us used to feel like failure. Now it feels like respect. We're still figuring it out. One conversation at a time. But for the first time in my life, when I think about my mom, I don't feel anger or guilt. I just feel peace. And maybe that's what healing actually looks like. Not forgetting what broke you, but building something better in its place. So yeah, that's where we are now. Not perfect, not picture-perfect family portrait material, but real. And that's more than I ever thought we'd be. Final update. It's been just over a year since everything with my mom, that argument. The silence, the therapy, the rebuilding. When I first wrote that post, I never imagined how deeply it would reshape not only my relationship with her, but how I understand love, family, and forgiveness. Because this isn't a fairy tale ending. It's not everything's perfect now. It's something quieter, deeper, more human. After that birthday dinner where she gave me the box of old photos, something inside both of us shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There was no movie-style reconciliation moment. It was just a steady, consistent effort, the kind that counts more than any big apology. Since then, I've been flying home every few months. Not out of guilt, but because I want to. Each time, I see her a little more at peace with herself. She's not the same anxious, controlling woman who needed validation through her kids. She's calmer now, lighter. In January, she called to tell me she'd joined a hiking group. My mom, the woman who used to call walking from the parking lot to target cardio, now goes hiking every Saturday morning. She said, "It's nice to be with people who don't need me to be their mother." That line floored me. For so long, her identity was wrapped up in being mom. It was her entire purpose. And when we stopped needing her, she fell apart. But now, she's learning to build a life that's hers, not a reflection of her kids. She even started painting again. I didn't even know she used to paint before she had us. Apparently, she stopped when she got pregnant with Tyler because it felt selfish. She sent me a picture of her latest piece last month, an abstract mix of blues and grays. She titled it Becoming. That word hit me hard because it describes both of us. We've become new versions of ourselves. Ones who understand each other not as mother and daughter trapped in old roles, but as two people who hurt each other, faced it, and decided to grow anyway. But I won't lie, it wasn't all smooth sailing. A few months after that peaceful Thanksgiving, something old crept back in. We were on the phone, and she casually said, "You know, Haley's engagement photos are beautiful. She's really doing things the right way, not rushing, not rebelling." That word, rebelling, stung. The old me would have snapped, hung up, and gone radio silent for weeks, but instead, I took a breath and said, "Mom, that comment makes me feel like you're comparing us. I know you probably didn't mean to, but it hurts." There was silence for a long second. Then she said softly, "You're right, I'm sorry. I guess some habits are hard to unlearn." That moment felt bigger than any of our therapy sessions. Because for the first time, she didn't defend herself. She didn't cry or shift the blame, or say I was being sensitive. She heard me. It might sound small, but if you grew up with someone like my mom, you know how monumental that is. The next time I saw her, in April, she greeted me with a smile and said, "You look happy." No mention of my job, my love life, my weight, or my choices, just happy. It was the simplest sentence, but it made me tear up right there in her driveway. I think that's when I realized we're not trying to fix the past anymore. We're just trying to be present. In June, we did something I never thought we'd do together. We went to therapy. Not her therapist, not mine, a neutral one. For both of us. It was awkward at first. We laughed too much, interrupted each other, deflected with sarcasm. But by the third session, something clicked. Our therapist asked her, "What did you want from Jess that you didn't get?" And Mom said, "I wanted her to need me. But I realize now that was my need, not hers." Then the therapist asked me the same question. I said, I wanted her to see me as my own person, not her mirror. Mom nodded. And for the first time in our lives, we understood each other without either of us needing to win. We left that session and went for ice cream after. It felt like being teenagers again, but in a good way. Easy, playful, light. She still slips sometimes. I still get defensive sometimes. But now, we know how to pause and reset. Last month, she came to visit me in Denver. She stayed at my apartment for a week. I was nervous at first. It was our first time sharing a space since before the blow-up. But it was nice, peaceful even. We cooked together, binge-watched an old show, went to a farmer's market one morning. While we were having coffee on my balcony, she looked out at the mountains and said, "You know, I used to think I raised you to be independent, but I think you were always that way. I just had to stop standing in the way." I didn't even respond. I just reached over and squeezed her hand. Before she left, she hugged me tight and whispered, "You taught me how to love better." I've replayed that sentence 100 times since, because I think that's what all of this has been about. Learning how to love better. Not louder, not harder, not out of fear or guilt, just better. Tyler's still a little standoffish, but he's thawing. He and Mom have been talking more lately, and I think he's starting to see the change too. Haley got married in September, and Mom was the calmest, happiest I've ever seen her at an event. No drama, no spotlight stealing, no guilt trips, just joy. At one point during the reception, I caught her dancing with Haley, laughing like she hadn't in years. When she saw me watching, she mouthed, "Come dance," and for the first time in forever, I didn't hesitate. We danced together under those string lights, and I realized we'd both become the women we needed each other to be years ago. It just took breaking first to get there. So yeah, I told my mom why she had kids, and it shattered us. But that truth, as brutal and uncomfortable as it was, became the seed for everything that grew after. Now, when people ask me about my family, I don't tense up or dodge the topic. I just smile and say, it's complicated, but it's good, because it is. Finally, it is. I used to think closure meant getting an apology. Now I know closure is just peace, and we found ours, not by forgetting the past, but by facing it together, piece by piece until it stopped hurting. So, if anyone's reading this who's sitting in that painful in-between, loving someone but knowing they've hurt you, I'll just say this. Sometimes telling the truth feels like destruction, but sometimes destruction is what clears the ground for something real to grow. Mom and I aren't perfect, but we're honest, and for us, that's everything. Stories number 8. My mother's husband ruined my relationship with my brother, and I can already see how it's all going to blow up. I wish I could say the story starts with something dramatic, like a screaming match or a betrayal, but honestly, it began with something much quieter, a dinner, a casual, come over and meet my new husband, kind of dinner that I thought would be uncomfortable at worst. Instead, it ended up unraveling everything between me and my younger brother, and it feels like I'm watching a slow-motion car crash I can't stop. I'm 33 now, but back then I was 29 and my brother, Kyle, was 24. We've always been close. Growing up, it was me and him against the world. Our dad wasn't really around, and Mom, Linda, did her best, but was kind of emotionally detached. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I used to help him with homework, talk him through his first breakup, cover for him when he snuck out. We weren't just siblings. We were more like partners in crime. When Mom told us she was getting remarried to a guy named Rick, I tried to be supportive. She'd been alone for almost a decade, and I genuinely wanted her to be happy. Rick was fine at first, He's one of those men who gives off a strong, I know better than everyone else vibe. But he wasn't outright mean, just smug, opinionated, and always ready to correct you. The kind of guy who insists on being the loudest in the room even when he has nothing to say. At that first dinner, I noticed how he talked over Kyle every time he tried to speak. Kyle would start telling a story about his new job at the auto shop, and Rick would interrupt with some unrelated anecdote about how things were done back in his day. It wasn't outright hostility, just this subtle way of making my brother feel small. I caught Kyle's eyes a few times, both of us exchanging silent looks of, here we go again, but Mom didn't see it. She was too busy glowing, sipping her wine, and laughing at Rick's stories. And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to ruin her night. Over the next year, things started shifting. Rick moved in, obviously, and since I live about 20 minutes away, I didn't see them all the time, but Kyle still did. He helped Mom with groceries, fixed stuff around the house, took her to appointments when Rick was busy. Then one day, Kyle called me sounding tense. He said Rick had made a comment about lazy millennials who never move out, clearly directed at him. I tried to laugh it off, told Kyle not to take it personally, but I could hear how much it stung. Then came Christmas. The one that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. Mom hosted, of course, and it was just me, Kyle, her, and Rick. Everything was fine at first, awkward but manageable. Then Rick brought up Kyle's job again. You still at that little garage? He said, in that tone that makes everything sound like an insult. Kyle said yeah, and that he was hoping to save enough to open his own place someday. Rick laughed. Not a normal laugh, the kind of laugh that says you poor, delusional kid. Then he said, son, dreams are cute, but you might want to focus on something realistic before your mom has to keep bailing you out. The table went silent. Kyle froze. I saw it happen in real time. The flicker of embarrassment, then anger. He looked at Mom, waiting for her to say something, to defend him, but she didn't. She just looked down at her plate. That was the moment something cracked between us all. Kyle stood up, muttered something about being done, and left. I followed him out and tried to calm him down in the driveway. But he was furious, not just at Rick, but at Mom. She just sat there, he kept saying. She didn't say a damn thing. He stopped going over there after that. For months, he barely called her. I tried to play mediator, but Mom got defensive. Rick's just old-fashioned, she said. Kyle needs thicker skin. I told her that wasn't fair, that Rick was condescending and disrespectful, but she accused me of exaggerating. Then last year, things took a turn for the worse. Mom called me one evening, crying. Rick and Kyle had gotten into a shouting match when Kyle came by to drop off her birthday gift. Apparently, Rick accused him of being ungrateful. Said Mom, wasted her money raising a bum, Kyle yelled back. And it escalated until Rick told him to get the hell out and not come back. Mom begged me to talk to Kyle. I did. He told me flat out he was done. If she's okay with that guy treating me like trash, she can have him, I'm out. And for a while, he really meant it. He stopped calling. He moved a few towns over for a new job. I'd see him occasionally, but it was clear the connection we used to have wasn't the same. He was colder, guarded, and every time I mentioned Mom, he'd change the subject. But here's the thing. I know how this story ends. I can see it like a movie playing out in slow motion, and it makes me sick because I can't stop it. Mom's been getting sicker. She hasn't said it outright, but I can tell. She's lost weight. She's tired all the time. And when I asked about her doctor's appointments, she brushed me off. Rick always answers the phone now when I call. She's resting, he says. Or she's fine. Don't worry. But I do worry, because that man is the last person I trust to look out for her. A few weeks ago, Mom finally admitted it. She's been diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer. It's spread, and the prognosis isn't good. She sounded so small on the phone, so unlike the Mom I grew up with. I sat there crying quietly, trying to think of what to say, but all I could manage was, I'll be there soon. Kyle doesn't know yet. I've been sitting on that knowledge for days, dreading the moment I tell him, because I already know how it'll go. He'll go numb first, then furious. He'll want to see her, but his pride will get in the way, and when he finally decides to visit, it'll be too late. That's what I mean when I say I know how this ends. I can feel it coming, the regret, the if only, the years of silence that we can't rewind. I want to be wrong, God. I want to be wrong so badly. But I've seen this movie too many times. Families divided over stupid pride, over stubbornness, over the refusal to just say I'm sorry before it's too late. Rick's still there, hovering like some gatekeeper, controlling the situation. Mom defends him even now, saying he's just trying to protect her peace. Meanwhile, her kids barely speak. Sometimes I sit up at night thinking about all the times I could have said something. Called out Rick more. Pushed Mom harder. Told Kyle not to give up on her, but I didn't. I kept waiting for things to get better on their own, and they never did. I'm planning to go see her this weekend, and I'll tell Kyle everything. I'll beg him to come, to put aside his anger, even if it's just once, because as much as I resent Rick, as much as I hate the situation, I can't stand the thought of him being right. That Kyle is too stubborn. That our family really will fall apart because of it. I know it's going to end badly. I know, deep down, that there's no happy ending waiting for us here. But I'll still try, because sometimes being right about how something will end doesn't make it any easier to accept. It just makes it hurt more. Update. I wish I could say things turned around. That I got to write one of those updates where everyone reconciles and love triumphs over pride. But real life isn't a movie, and sometimes closure doesn't look like forgiveness. It looks like standing in a hospital hallway at 2 a.m., realizing you waited too long after I wrote my last post. I finally told Kyle about Mom's diagnosis. I called him on a Sunday afternoon. I remember my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. He didn't pick up the first time, or the second, and when he finally answered, his voice sounded wary, like he expected bad news but didn't want to hear it. When I told him, there was just silence on the other end. Then he said, "How long have you known?" I told him the truth. A couple of weeks. He didn't yell, but I could hear the disappointment in his breathing. That kind of heavy pause that says more than words ever could. Then he just said, "All right," and hung up. I thought that was it. I thought he'd gone back into his shell for good. But 2 days later, he showed up at Mom's house. Rick called me that night, his voice smug even through the static. "Your brother came by." I told him Linda needs rest and can't handle stress right now. He made a scene and left. I saw red. I didn't even think. I grabbed my keys and drove straight there. When I got to Mom's, she was sitting on the couch, pale and weak but still trying to smile. "It's okay," she whispered. "Rick just doesn't want me upset." That was the first time I said it out loud. "Mom, he's not protecting you. He's isolating you." She looked like I'd slapped her. Rick walked in right then, holding his phone, and said, "You need to leave if you're going to start this crap again," we argued. Loudly, ugly words I can't take back. I told him he was a control freak. He told me I was an ungrateful brat who only showed up when things got bad. Mom started crying, and that shut us both up. I left after that. I couldn't stand to see her torn between us. The next week was quiet. Then Mom called and asked if I could come by alone. When I did, she apologized. For Rick, for everything. She looked so small sitting in that recliner. Wrapped in a blanket, her hair had thinned, and her voice was barely there. She told me she'd tried to talk to Kyle, but he wouldn't answer her calls. "I think he hates me," she said. "He doesn't," I told her. "He's just hurt." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. A month later, she was gone. It happened fast, faster than anyone expected. One night she had trouble breathing, and by morning she was in the hospital. Rick called me, but by the time I got there, it was too late. She passed with him holding her hand. Not me, not Kyle. The funeral was small, quiet. Rick planned everything without asking us. The service was fine, I guess. Too polished, too cold. There wasn't a single photo of her with me or Kyle, just ones of her and Rick, smiling on some trip they'd taken. Kyle showed up halfway through. He stood in the back, didn't say a word when it was over. He left before anyone could talk to him. I caught him in the parking lot. "Please don't go," I said. "Just talk to me." He looked at me with this hollow kind of grief. "You were right," he said. "You said I'd regret it. And I do." Then he hugged me tight and desperate, and we both cried right there next to the cars. We haven't seen each other much since, but at least we talk again. Small steps, texts, short calls, sending each other old pictures of Mom. I think we're both still trying to figure out how to live with the guilt of what we didn't fix in time. Rick, on the other hand, he's already moved out of Mom's house, sold it 2 months after the funeral. Didn't even tell us until after the papers were signed. The house we grew up in, gone. I tried to be angry. But honestly, I'm too tired. He sent me a short message last month. "She loved you both. I hope you remember that instead of hating me." I didn't respond, but here's the thing that haunts me. He's not wrong about that last part. Mom did love us, and I think she loved him too. In her own way. That's what makes it all so complicated. He wasn't evil, just the wrong kind of man for a woman who already struggled to stand up for herself. Kyle came over last weekend. We cooked dinner and opened one of Mom's old photo albums. For the first time in years, we laughed together. He told me he finally started therapy. Said he's trying to forgive himself for not showing up sooner. I told him I'm trying too, after he left. I sat there flipping through those old photos. Mom holding us as kids, our messy birthdays, Christmas mornings with paper everywhere. And I realized something. I was right about Rick, about how this would end, about how it would all fall apart, and I hate that I was. Because being right didn't save anything. It didn't stop the distance, or the resentment, or the loss. All it did was make the silence heavier when I look back on it. I still call her number sometimes, out of habit. It goes straight to voicemail now. I never leave a message, but I wish I could tell her one thing. That I'm trying to forgive her too. Not because she deserves it, but because I need to. Kyle and I promised to visit her grave together next week. Maybe that's the start of something new. Maybe that's the only good thing that can come from all this. That at least the two of us found our way back. Even if it took too long, I still catch myself wanting to call her when something good happens. I still hear her laugh in my head when I tell a dumb joke. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can almost see that dinner table again. Mom smiling, Kyle laughing, Rick not yet a problem. Everything's still fixable. If I could go back, I'd tell my younger self not to wait for things to get better on their own. Because they don't. You have to fight for the people you love before it's too late. But I can't go back. So I'll just keep trying to make things right now, with what's left. That's all any of us can really do. Final update. It's been 2 years since Mom passed, and the quiet has finally settled. Not the kind of quiet that comes from grief's sharp edge, but the softer kind. The kind that still hurts, but hums low in the background instead of screaming in your chest. Kyle and I both changed a lot after everything. I guess when you watch your family fall apart in slow motion, and you're powerless to stop it, you either let it destroy you or you let it shape you. We somehow managed the second. For a long time, I didn't go near anything connected to Mom. Not her recipes, not her voicemails, not even the smell of her old perfume. I boxed everything up and told myself I'd deal with it later. Later turned into months. Then over a year, the house Rick sold was gone, replaced by some sterile-looking modern home with a fresh lawn, and no trace of our childhood in it. I drove by once and immediately wished I hadn't. It felt like seeing a ghost get erased. But then, last fall, Kyle called and asked if I wanted to do something for Mom's birthday. I was surprised. He's never been sentimental about dates. I said yes before even asking what he had in mind. He told me he'd found a small, quiet spot about an hour outside of town. A park by a lake with walking trails and big oak trees. We drove out there early in the morning, just the two of us. He brought a thermos of coffee. I brought an old photo of Mom, and we just sat by the water for a while. It was peaceful, almost eerie how still the lake was that day. At some point, Kyle started talking about her, about things I'd forgotten, like how she used to hum when she cooked. Always the same tune from some old Fleetwood Mac song. Or how she would write tiny grocery lists on scraps of mail because she never remembered where the notepad was. We laughed a lot, which felt strange and good at the same time. Then, halfway through a story about one of their Christmas fights, he stopped and said quietly, "You know, I used to think she didn't love me enough to defend me, but I think now she just didn't know how." That hit me hard because he was right. I'd spent so much time being angry. At her, at Rick, at Kyle, that I never stopped to think about how much fear she probably lived with. Mom wasn't cruel or cold by nature. She was just tired. Tired of being the middle ground between everyone else's storms. After that day, Kyle and I started spending more time together. Not constantly, but enough. Sunday brunches, movie nights. Small moments that rebuilt what we lost piece by piece. He met someone. A woman named Brooke. And I swear I saw a version of him I hadn't seen since before everything went to hell. Lighter. Softer. He talks about her like he used to talk about cars. Full of detail and wonder. They're engaged now. He asked me to be his person of honor. I said yes. Of course, though I cried the whole time. A few months after their engagement, I got a letter in the mail from Rick. Handwritten. I almost threw it away. But curiosity got the better of me. It wasn't long, just a single page. He said he'd moved to Arizona to be near his daughter from his first marriage. He wrote that he still thought about Mom every day, that she was the calmest storm he'd ever known. And then at the bottom he wrote, "You were right about me. I didn't know how to love her the way she needed. I'm sorry for what I took from both of you." I didn't respond, but I didn't tear it up either. I put it in the same box where I keep Mom's old letters and pictures. Maybe someday I'll know what to do with it. The funny thing about time is that it doesn't fix everything, but it dulls the edges enough that you can start rebuilding without bleeding every time you remember. A few months ago, Kyle and I hosted a small memorial fundraiser in Mom's name. We worked with a local community center to create a small scholarship for women over 40 who are going back to school. Something Mom always wished she'd done, but never got the chance to. We called it the Linda Ray Hope Fund. It wasn't much at first, but somehow it grew. Friends, old neighbors, even people from her old church chipped in. Watching her name on that banner made something inside me unclench. Like maybe finally she got to leave behind something good. The day we launched the fund, Kyle gave a short speech. He said, "My mom wasn't perfect, but she was good. And being good in a world that's hard and loud, that's something." I think that's the closest we'll ever get to peace with her story. As for me, I started therapy again last year. It's helped more than I expected. I've stopped trying to rewrite what happened in my head, and started learning to live with it instead. I still struggle with that old instinct, the one that makes me want to predict how things will go wrong before they even start. But I'm trying to stop doing that, trying to let life surprise me again. Sometimes I dream about Mom, not the sick version, not the quiet, fading one, but her as she was when I was a kid, laughing in the kitchen, dancing barefoot on the tile while music played from the radio. I wake up from those dreams feeling both hollow and whole. Kyle's wedding is next month. Brooke wants to wear one of Mom's necklaces, and when she told me that, I cried again. But in a good way this time. I like to think Mom would have loved her. She's calm and kind in all the ways our mother was when life wasn't beating her down. I don't know if I'll ever completely stop replaying the what-ifs. What if I'd spoken up sooner? What if Mom had left Rick earlier? What if Kyle had come back one more time? But I also know that if I keep living there, I'll never move forward, and Mom, for all her flaws, would have hated that for us. So this is me trying to let it go. The guilt, the anger, the being right. Because being right about how things would fall apart didn't save anyone. But maybe being wrong about how they can heal could still change something. I visit her grave every few months now. I bring a coffee for me and one for her, sit in the grass, and tell her about whatever's new. Kyle's promotion, Brooke's new job, the stray cat I accidentally started feeding and now own. Sometimes I talk for hours. Other times I just sit there quietly and watch the wind move through the trees. And every time I leave, I whisper the same thing. I love you, Mom. And I forgive you, because I finally do, and for the first time in a very long time, I think she forgives me too. Final update. It's strange how life keeps moving even when a part of you still feels frozen in the past. I never thought I'd write another update, but tonight, sitting on the porch with a glass of wine and Diesel the cat from my now husband's old apartment curled on my lap, I realized there's more to say. Not because there's new drama or heartbreak, but because for the first time in years, I can look back at everything that happened and not feel bitterness. Just a kind of quiet understanding. Kyle and Brooke got married 3 years ago, and that day felt like a turning point for both of us. The ceremony was small, in a garden behind an old inn, with fairy lights strung through the trees and a soft rain that stopped just long enough for them to say their vows. There was a moment, right before Brooke walked down the aisle, when Kyle turned to me and whispered, "I wish Mom could see this." I squeezed his hand and said, "She can." He smiled, but his eyes gave him away. After the wedding, we went back to the lake, the same one we'd visited for Mom's birthday, and scattered a handful of white rose petals across the water. Kyle said, "I think she'd finally be proud of us." I think he was right. A few months later, Brooke got pregnant. Their son Miles is 2 now, and he's the spitting image of Kyle at that age. Same curly brown hair, same stubborn grin. The first time I held him, I cried so hard Brooke thought something was wrong. I just kept thinking, Mom should have been here to see this. But maybe in some strange, quiet way, she was. Kyle has become the kind of dad we never had. Patient, gentle, the kind of man who kneels down to his kid's level and listens. Sometimes I watch him and feel this odd mix of joy and grief, like watching a cycle finally break and realizing you helped, even just by surviving long enough to see it happen. As for me, I'm married now too. I met Jason at a community fundraiser 2 years ago, the same one we started in Mom's name. He was volunteering as a photographer, and we bonded over coffee and a mutual inability to remember anyone's name. He's calm in the way I never was, the kind of man who doesn't try to fix your silence. just sits in it with you until you're ready to talk. We got married last spring in a courthouse. Just the two of us and a judge who looked like she'd seen every kind of love story imaginable. I wore a simple blue dress. Jason wore his grandfather's tie. And afterward we went for burgers instead of champagne. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right. Real and quiet and ours. Sometimes I wonder what Mom would think of the life we've built since she left. I think she'd be proud of Kyle. I think she'd like Brooke. And I think she'd look at me and say, "See? You finally stopped trying to predict how everything ends." And she'd be right. That was always my curse. Thinking too far ahead. Assuming the worst. Believing that being prepared for heartbreak would somehow make it hurt less. It never did. It just robbed me of the moments in between. The small, gentle ones that mattered most. I've learned that life doesn't give you one big cinematic moment of closure. It gives you dozens of small ones. Like the day I donated Mom's old coat to a women's shelter and felt a strange peace instead of guilt. Or the day Kyle called just to ask about my day, with no tension or careful pauses in his voice. Or when Miles looked up at a photo of Mom on my wall and said, "That's Grandma Linda." Even though he's never met her, I've kept one box of her things, not the heavy kind, just a few small reminders. Her wedding ring from before Rick, the grocery list she wrote the week before her diagnosis, a photo of her holding both of us at the beach. Sometimes I open it and just sit with it for a while. I used to do that to cry, now I do it to remember. Rick sent one final letter last year, short again. He said he was in hospice, and that he wanted me to know he kept Mom's wedding photo by his bedside. "She was the best part of me," he wrote. "You and your brother were the rest." I never answered. I didn't need to. Forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision not to carry the anger anymore. Kyle and I still run the scholarship in Mom's name. It's grown bigger than we ever expected. 3 recipients a year now, and local businesses have started contributing. We even have an annual fundraiser dinner. The first time we hosted it, I was terrified people wouldn't show up, but they did. Old neighbors, former co-workers of Mom's, even some of the women who received the scholarship in the past. It's become something real, something living. In her name, after the event this year, I found myself sitting outside the venue, watching the lights reflect off the street. Jason sat next to me and said, "You know, I never met your mom, but I feel like I know her through you." And that's when I realized, she's not really gone. Not in the way I used to think. She's in Kyle's patience, in Brooke's kindness, in Miles's stubborn smile, in the way I've learned to finally breathe without waiting for something to go wrong. I used to think being right about how things would end was a curse. Now I know it was just fear dressed up as foresight. Because endings aren't always what they seem. Sometimes they're just transitions into something gentler, quieter, more honest. I don't dream about Mom as often anymore. But when I do, it's always the same dream. She's sitting on the porch of that old house, sun in her hair, smiling. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. I just sit next to her, both of us looking out at the street, comfortable in the silence. I think that's her way of telling me we're finally okay. And maybe that's all I ever needed. Not a grand apology, not an explanation, just peace. So, yeah, I was right all those years ago. Things did fall apart. But what I didn't see coming, what I never could have predicted, is how beautifully they'd come back together. In their own imperfect way. If she could see us now, I think she'd smile that tired little smile of hers and say, "Told you it'd all work out." And for once in my life, I'd be happy to be wrong. Stories number 9. My boyfriend's homemade romantic dinner turned out to be takeout from down the street. I've been dating my boyfriend, Travis, for almost a year. We met through mutual friends at a 4th of July barbecue, and from the start, he had this laid-back charm that made everyone love him. He's the type who can walk into a room and make it feel like a party just started. I'm more of a planner, someone who likes details and small gestures. So, when he told me he wanted to surprise me with a homemade romantic dinner, I was touched. He told me not to make any plans for Friday night, and said he'd handle everything. He even sent me a text that morning, "Don't eat lunch. I'm cooking something special for us tonight. Dress nice." It made me smile. He's not the cooking type, so I figured he was going all out to impress me. When I got to his apartment, I could smell something delicious the second I walked in. Like garlic, butter, and herbs. The table was set with candles and a bottle of wine. He had music playing softly in the background, and everything looked perfect. He came out of the kitchen wearing an apron, wiping his hands with a towel like he'd just finished plating something. "You're right on time," he said with this proud grin. He served me a plate of fettuccine alfredo with grilled shrimp and roasted vegetables. It looked amazing. I told him it smelled incredible, and he smiled again, saying, "Secret family recipe." I took a bite. And yeah, it was really good. Almost too good. Like restaurant good. Now, I've eaten enough of Travis's cooking before to know his skills max out at scrambled eggs and boxed mac and cheese. So while I was eating, something started to feel off. The pasta was perfectly creamy. The shrimp were cooked just right. And the vegetables had this roasted char that tasted professional. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to ruin the moment. But curiosity got the better of me when I went to grab another glass of wine and noticed a familiar-looking brown paper bag half-tucked behind the trash can. The logo on it was from Giovanni's. This Italian place literally 2 blocks away. Now, Giovanni's is one of my favorite restaurants. I've ordered that same exact shrimp Alfredo from there dozens of times. It's kind of their signature dish. I picked up the bag, peeked inside, and saw takeout containers, still warm. When I came back to the table, I tried to keep it light. I asked, "So, when did you start making pasta like a professional chef?" He laughed a little too hard and said, "I've been watching a lot of YouTube." I said, "Cool. Which channel? Giovanni's Kitchen?" He froze. The color drained from his face. I held up the bag and said, "You didn't even take out the evidence." He tried to play it off, saying, "Babe, it's just a joke." I wanted to make sure it was perfect, so I got some help. "Help?" I asked. "From a delivery driver?" That's when he got defensive. He said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that the point was he wanted to do something nice for me, and the thought should count more than the method. I told him the thought would have counted if he'd been honest. I would have been thrilled with frozen pizza if it meant he actually made it himself. The more I pressed, the more irritated he got. He said, "Why can't you just take a compliment?" I set up the table, poured the wine, made it romantic. "You're acting like I committed a crime." I told him it wasn't about the food. It was the lying. If he'd said, "Hey, I got takeout from Giovanni's because I wanted us to have a nice night," I would have thought it was sweet. But pretending he made it from scratch just to impress me felt manipulative. He rolled his eyes and said, "God, you always have to find something wrong." That stung. I grabbed my bag and left before I said something I'd regret. Later that night, he sent me a text saying I embarrassed him for no reason and that he just wanted to do something romantic. I didn't respond. The next day, my best friend Kelsey came over, and I told her the whole story. She laughed so hard she nearly choked on her coffee, but then said, "Okay, yeah, that's dumb, but it's also kind of sad. He clearly wanted to impress you and panicked. I get that. But it's not the first time he's exaggerated or twisted the truth to make himself look better. There have been little things, like saying he helped fix his friend's car when he really just held the flashlight, or claiming he made the cupcakes he bought for my birthday from the grocery store bakery. I used to think it was harmless, but now it's starting to feel like a pattern. We talked again a few days later. He apologized, kind of. He said he didn't mean to lie. He just wanted it to feel special. I told him the only thing special about it was how fast I found the takeout bag. He didn't laugh. I'm not sure what happens next. I like him, but I don't want to date someone who lies over stuff that doesn't even matter. If he's willing to fake a homemade dinner, what else would he fake? I still have the takeout receipt in my purse. I don't even know why I kept it. Maybe as a reminder that sometimes, the smallest lie tells you everything you need to know. A week went by before Travis and I talked again. I figured the silence meant we were done, but then he texted asking if we could meet for coffee, just to clear the air. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I still cared about him, even if I was angry, and part of me wanted closure more than anything. When I got to the cafe, he was already there, sitting by the window with that half-smile he always used when he was trying to charm his way out of trouble. He stood up, gave me a quick hug and said, "You look great." I just thanked him and sat down. I wasn't going to make this easy. He started with, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I know I messed up." Then he launched into this long speech about how he grew up never feeling good enough, and how that sometimes made him exaggerate things to feel impressive. He said he wanted to make that dinner perfect because I deserved something special, and he was afraid his actual cooking wouldn't measure up. I listened, but I couldn't help wondering if that was genuine honesty or another performance. He's good with words, and I've noticed he tends to tell people what he thinks they want to hear. I told him, "I appreciate the explanation, but you could have just been honest. I would have been happy if you'd made me a grilled cheese." He smiled a little and said, "Yeah, but I wanted it to be romantic. You've done so much for me, And I wanted to give you a night to remember. Mission accomplished, I said. And he laughed softly. He asked if I'd be willing to give him another chance. I didn't answer right away. I told him trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight, and that this wasn't just about dinner. It was about whether I could rely on him to tell the truth when it mattered. We ended up spending almost 2 hours talking. It wasn't heated, but it wasn't exactly comfortable either. He asked if he could cook for me again. For real this time. I said if he wanted to, fine. But I didn't want another production. Just him, some food and honesty. A few days later, he invited me over again. This time, he FaceTimed me from his kitchen while he was actually cooking. I saw the mess. The sauce splattering on the counter, the half-burned garlic bread, the smoke alarm going off once, and I couldn't stop laughing. It was chaotic, but it was real. He even showed me the grocery receipt taped to the fridge as proof he bought everything himself. When I got there, dinner was edible but far from perfect. The pasta was overcooked, the chicken was a little dry, but he looked so proud of himself that I couldn't even care. It felt genuine in a way that takeout never could. After dinner, we sat on the couch with wine and talked more openly than we had in months. He admitted he'd lied before, small things, usually to make himself sound more capable or interesting. I told him that kind of insecurity can wreck a relationship faster than any big lie. He agreed, and for once he didn't argue or deflect. We didn't magically fix everything that night, but it felt like a start. The weird thing is, the whole takeout dinner mess ended up showing me more about who Travis is than any romantic gesture could have. He's insecure, but not malicious. He tries too hard sometimes, but he also really does care. I'm still keeping my guard up, but I'm giving him another shot, mostly because he's trying now, really trying, and I can see it. It's been about a month since then, and so far things have been okay. He hasn't lied again, at least, not that I know of. He's been more transparent, even about little things. Like when he forgot to pay his electric bill on time. Instead of making up some story about the system being down, he just told me he forgot. It sounds small, but I actually appreciated it. He even cooked again last week. Tacos this time. They were over-seasoned and messy, but he kept joking. At least it's not Giovanni's. Maybe it's progress. Maybe it's temporary. But at least I know now what honesty from him looks like. Imperfect, messy, and probably a little overcooked, but real still. I'll never look at takeout bags the same way again. It's been almost 6 months since the takeout dinner incident, and I figured it's time to give one last update because things took a few unexpected turns. After that second dinner, the real one, where Travis actually cooked, we started seeing each other more often. At first, I thought maybe we were rebuilding something stronger, but over time, I realized that while he'd gotten better at being honest about small things, he still had trouble with anything that made him look bad. It wasn't lying exactly. It was this habit of omission. He'd forget to mention things that might upset me or change how I saw him. For example, I found out through a mutual friend that he'd gotten written up at work for missing a project deadline. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying, "Oh, it wasn't a big deal." But the friend said he'd actually been put on a performance plan. When I brought that up, he admitted it and said he just didn't want me to think he was unreliable. That conversation hit me like déjà vu. It was the same pattern, trying to control how I saw him instead of trusting me to handle the truth. We didn't fight exactly. I just got quieter, more withdrawn. The thing about trust is, once it cracks even slightly, you start noticing every little chip afterward. About a month ago, I told him I needed some space. I said I didn't want to keep feeling like I was waiting for the next half-truth to fall out of his mouth. He looked hurt, but didn't argue. He said, "I know I keep screwing up, I don't mean to. I just want to be someone you're proud of." That was the saddest part. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He really believed he had to perform to earn love. I think that's when I realized it wasn't my job to fix that for him. I can support someone, sure, but I can't build their self-worth for them. We stayed in touch for a bit. Occasional texts, casual check-ins. But it's been a few weeks since we last talked. I think we both know it's over, even if neither of us has said the actual words. He still follows me on social media and likes my posts sometimes, but that's it. The crazy thing is, I'm not angry anymore. I was for a long time, but now I just feel peaceful. That dinner that started it all taught me more than I expected. About honesty, vulnerability, and what I need from a relationship. Since then, I've been spending more time on my own. I picked up cooking again, not out of irony, but because I wanted to see if I could actually enjoy it without associating it with that night. Turns out, I love it. I even tried to recreate the pasta he made for me, the Giovanni's carbonara. And while it didn't taste quite as perfect, it felt a lot more satisfying knowing I'd actually made it myself. A few weeks ago, I ran into Travis at the farmer's market. It was awkward for about 5 seconds until he smiled and said, "Hey, you're not avoiding Italian restaurants anymore, huh?" I laughed, and for the first time, it didn't sting. He looked better, calmer somehow. He told me he'd started seeing a therapist. Working on his confidence, I told him I was proud of him. Then he said something that stuck with me. "I thought I was losing you because I wasn't enough, but I think I lost you because I never let you see who I actually was." We stood there for a while, just talking like old friends. When we finally said goodbye, I didn't feel that ache in my chest anymore. I just felt grateful for the lesson, the closure, the growth. I don't regret dating him, even with all the lies and the awkward fallout. I think everyone meets at least one person who shows them what honesty really means, not through perfection, but through failure. Now, when I think about love, I don't picture grand gestures or homemade candlelit dinners. I picture quiet truth. I picture someone admitting, "I messed up," without trying to make it sound prettier than it is. And if I ever find that again, I'll know it's real. So yeah, that's the final chapter. Travis and I aren't together, but we're both doing better apart than we ever did together. I hope he finds someone who sees him for who he is, and that he finally learns that's enough. As for me, I'll stick to making my own pasta. It's been a full year since that night, and honestly, it feels like a lifetime ago. When I think back to the romantic dinner fiasco, it doesn't sting anymore. It just feels like something that happened to a different version of me. After that last time I saw Travis at the farmer's market, we didn't talk again for months. I think we both silently agreed to move on. I focused on myself, my job, and rebuilding a life that didn't revolve around someone else's moods or insecurities. It was weird at first, quiet in a way I wasn't used to. But it turned out to be exactly what I needed. I started journaling again, taking long walks after work, cooking every weekend. There's something therapeutic about chopping vegetables and following a recipe from start to finish. I even took a few cooking classes downtown. One of the instructors, a retired chef named Paul, used to joke that everyone has a dish that defines their heartbreak. Mine, apparently, was carbonara. By the end of the 6-week course, I could make it without burning the pancetta or overcooking the noodles, which felt like a metaphor in itself. Learning not to rush things. Travis texted me once around New Year's. It was short. "Hope you're doing well." I wished him the same. And that was that. No closure speech. No digging up old feelings. Just two people who shared something messy and human, moving on in their own directions. He popped up again on social media a few months later, posting about running a half marathon, going to therapy, learning to cook. I didn't reach out, but I smiled when I saw it. He looked lighter, more himself. Sometimes, I think maybe the breakup wasn't just what I needed, but what he needed too. As for me, I've been seeing someone new for about 3 months now. His name's Matt, and he's the polar opposite of Travis in all the best ways. He doesn't try to impress me. He's the kind of guy who admits when he forgets to buy groceries, or when he burns dinner instead of pretending it was part of the recipe. The first night he cooked for me, he accidentally set off the smoke alarm, and we ended up ordering pizza. He laughed so hard he cried, and I remember thinking, this is what real feels like. The funny part? We actually started dating because of food. I met him at a local cooking class I signed up for on a whim. A new one, just for fun. He was standing next to me trying to whisk eggs and somehow managed to spill half of them on my apron. I teased him about it, and he told me I had a professional whisking stance. We've been inseparable ever since. Sometimes, he'll joke about being the guy who replaced Giovanni's takeout, and I'll just laugh. He knows the story, I told him early on, partly because it was too ridiculous to hide. He didn't judge me or Travis, he just said, "Sounds like he was trying to love you the only way he knew how." That stuck with me. Now, when I cook, I don't think about proving anything to anyone. I just enjoy it. I don't need perfection or grand gestures. I just need effort, truth, and someone who shows up without pretending. The last real reminder of Travis came a few weeks ago. I was cleaning out my phone and found an old photo from that night, the one I'd taken before I knew the truth, where the table looked like something out of a magazine. Candles, perfect plating, everything staged. For a second, I almost deleted it, but then I didn't. Instead, I added it to a small folder on my phone called Lessons, because that's what it was. A lesson in honesty, in self-worth, in knowing the difference between romance and performance. I haven't heard from Travis since, and that's fine. I think we both got what we needed. I learned to stop settling for half-truths disguised as effort. He learned hopefully that love doesn't need a script to be meaningful, and me? I learned that sometimes the most romantic thing someone can do is be honest about their limits. So this is the real final update. No big drama, no wild twist, just a calm ending. I'm happy he's okay, and that's enough. Oh, and for what it's worth, my carbonara is finally better than Giovanni's. Stories number 10. My friends got mad when I told them to get fucked. I 27M never thought I'd be posting about my friends on here. But honestly, this one blew up in a way I didn't expect. And I need to get it off my chest, so a little backstory. I've had the same group of friends since college. There's me, Alex 28M, Jordan 27F, Mike 29M, and Claire 26F. For the most part, we've always had a pretty tight bond. We're the kind of friends who text every day, grab drinks on the weekend, and occasionally roast each other mercilessly. But recently, something changed. And I think it came down to boundaries. Or more accurately, my complete lack of patience for theirs. It all started about 2 months ago. I was going through a tough time. My job was stressful. I had some family drama, and to top it off, my girlfriend and I had just broken up. I wasn't looking for advice or pity, just space. I thought my friends would understand. I thought wrong. One Thursday evening, Alex texts the group chat, all excited. Guys, we should do a trip to Vegas next weekend. Let's blow off some steam. Everyone else in the chat starts piling on ideas. Flights, hotels, who's bringing what, all that stuff. Then Jordan chimes in. You guys should seriously come. Mike's already saving, Claire's in, Alex is free. So you have to come. It's perfect. Now normally, I would have just said, nah, not this time, and left it at that. But that night, I'd had one too many drinks and was feeling raw from the breakup, I replied. Honestly? Get fucked, and that's it, crickets. Then Alex texts me, dude, what the hell? We're just trying to have fun. No need to be like that, I didn't reply. The next morning, I wake up to a string of texts from everyone. Mike calling me an asshole, Claire asking if I was serious, Jordan saying I was killing the vibe for everyone, and the group chat just exploded. People started taking sides, debating if I was overreacting, if I was too harsh, if I needed therapy. So, yes, I told my friends to get fucked, and yes, I think they were overreacting, but hear me out. I wasn't being petty or mean-spirited. I just couldn't deal with the pressure of everyone else's excitement when I was drowning in my own shit. I felt cornered, like if I didn't respond, I was being a buzzkill. If I did respond honestly, I was being an asshole. And honestly, saying get fucked was easier than explaining. I don't have the mental energy to deal with this trip, or your excitement, or all of it right now. A few days later, I tried to explain in private texts to Alex and Jordan. Alex said I was overreacting and needed to lighten up. Jordan said I was being dramatic and ruining friendships over nothing. Mike and Claire barely spoke to me after that. The trip happened without me. Pictures flooded social media, everyone looking happy and carefree, and I felt fine, actually. Relieved. Fast forward to last weekend. We were all at a bar for Claire's birthday. I wasn't planning to go, but mutual friends convinced me. As soon as I walked in, the tension was obvious. Alex gave me a cold nod. Jordan avoided eye contact. Mike made a joke about someone being a little salty lately. Claire, bless her, just smiled awkwardly and grabbed me a drink. I realized that for a while, I'd been trying to force myself into this friend dynamic when I wasn't in the right headspace. And for them, I think it hurt because I broke the unspoken rule. Always be excited for group plans, always go along, always participate. We all ended up talking later that night, more calmly than I expected. I explained why I snapped, why I said what I said, and how I needed some space. Alex and Jordan listened but made it clear they still thought it was harsh. Mike finally said, "Yeah, man, that was extreme, but I get it." "I guess," Claire just nodded. Nothing was perfect. Nothing was magically fixed, but it was a start. I think what hurt the most, and the reason this blew up in my head like it did, was realizing that friendship can sometimes feel like a trap. Expectations, obligations, unspoken rules. And sometimes you have to push back, even in a way that makes you look like the asshole, to preserve your sanity. So yeah, I told my friends to get fucked. Did I mean it in a permanent hateful way? No. Did I say it out of frustration and a need for personal boundaries? Absolutely. I'm not expecting everyone to forgive me completely. And I don't know if this group will ever go back to the same dynamic we had. But I do know that for the first time in a while, I felt honest. And that, strangely enough, felt liberating. I'm just curious. Was I really the asshole here? Or were they just too caught up in their own excitement to see where I was coming from? Update. It's been about 2 months since I told my friends to get fucked. And honestly, it's been complicated. I didn't expect things to get better overnight, and they didn't. But some of the tension has eased, and I've learned a lot about boundaries, friendships, and what happens when you finally stop pretending everything's fine. After that bar night for Claire's birthday, a few of us ended up staying later than expected. Alex, surprisingly, was the first to break the ice. He pulled me aside and said, "Look, I get why you said what you said. I was just shocked. We've never seen you react like that before." I told him the truth. That I wasn't mad at them personally. I just felt overwhelmed by everything else in my life. That I needed space, and that the trip, the texts, the excitement, it all felt like pressure I couldn't handle. Alex nodded slowly, then laughed a little. "Man, fair. But damn, you really don't sugarcoat things, huh?" Jordan also came around. Eventually, she sent me a text a few days later. Just one line. "Hey, I get it. Maybe I was too pushy. I just want us to all be okay," I responded honestly, saying I appreciated her message. "And I wanted to work toward being okay too, Mike." He's still a little standoffish. He hasn't said much since the incident, but he didn't outright ignore me at the bar either. I think he's giving me space, and that's fine. Claire has been the most understanding. She keeps checking in with me privately, making sure I'm feeling included without pressuring me to participate in things I'm not ready for. The biggest change, honestly, is in me. Before, I would have swallowed my feelings just to keep the group dynamic smooth. I'd been conditioned to think that if I ever voiced frustration, I'd be the asshole. Now, I realized that saying "get fucked" wasn't about tearing anyone down. It was about protecting myself. And while it hurt their feelings initially, I think some of them are starting to understand that boundaries aren't personal attacks. Since then, I've been more intentional about communicating. For example, when Jordan invited me to a small hiking trip last weekend, I didn't just ghost or respond sarcastically. I said, "Hey, I'm really not up for that right now. Thanks for thinking of me, though." Simple, honest, no drama, and something surprising happened. Alex actually responded positively. "Thanks for being upfront. We'll miss you this time. But next time you're in..." That simple acknowledgement felt huge. No guilt tripping, no judgment, just respect. I've also started seeing them outside the context of big group plans. One-on-one coffee with Alex, a casual walk with Jordan, and texting Claire just to catch up. It's been refreshing. I realized I don't have to participate in every group activity to maintain these friendships. I just need to engage in ways that actually work for me. I think the bigger lesson here is about friendship itself. Sometimes we get so caught up in the idea of being good friends, always showing up, always being enthusiastic, that we forget to check in with ourselves. And when we finally do, it might come out harshly like I did. But if the underlying intent is honest and protective of your mental health, it's not inherently wrong. So, while the group dynamic isn't fully back to where it was before, it feels more authentic than it ever has. I'm finally letting go of the idea that I need to please everyone or fit into a mold of perfect friend. And surprisingly, they're still here. Not perfect, not all warm hugs and laughter. But still here, I'm cautiously optimistic. The tension hasn't vanished completely. Old habits die slowly. But I can finally breathe around them. I can exist as me without performing for the group or apologizing for my boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like my friendships are sustainable. The get fucked moment? It's still awkward to talk about. Alex jokes about it occasionally. And Jordan makes a playful, "Remember when you told us to get fucked?" But instead of anger, it's more like a shared memory that marks a turning point. A weird, messy turning point that ultimately made us all a little better at understanding each other. I don't know if I'd do it exactly the same way again. Maybe I'd explain myself calmly instead of dropping that line. But I don't regret it. Sometimes, truth needs a little punch to be heard. And honestly, that's where we are now. A little bruised, a little awkward, but honest. And for me, that's progress. Final update. It's been about 6 months since my last update about telling my friends to get fucked. And honestly, I can finally say things feel settled, not perfect, not like the group dynamic is exactly how it used to be, but functional, and more importantly, honest. After the hiking invite incident, I noticed subtle changes in how everyone interacted with me. Alex stopped giving me that "why are you like this?" look and started actually asking me how I'm doing without judgment. Jordan checks in more thoughtfully, no longer trying to push me into group plans I'm not ready for. Mike, while still a bit distant, has even started texting me to hang out one-on-one, which is huge considering he ignored me for a while. And Claire? She's still the peacekeeper. But in a way that doesn't make me feel guilty. She's genuinely considerate now. I realized the thing that blew everything up in the first place wasn't just me saying get fucked. It was the underlying issue. I'd been pretending to be okay with constant group pressure, while secretly feeling overwhelmed and undersupported. Saying that line wasn't ideal, but it forced everyone, including me, to confront the truth. A few weeks ago, we had a small barbecue at Alex's place. Only a handful of us, no huge plans, no pressure. I showed up, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was part of the group without compromising my mental health. We laughed, joked, shared stories. The old camaraderie was there, but it was tempered with a new respect. They know my boundaries, I know theirs. There was a quiet moment later in the evening. We were sitting on the patio with beers, the sun setting, just talking about random stuff. Alex looked at me and said, "You know, I was pissed at you for a while. But honestly, I think you did us a favor. Made us think about how we treat each other." I laughed, half in disbelief. "Yeah, I doubt we'd have ever had this conversation otherwise," Jordan added. "It's weird, but I think you made the group better." Hard truth, man. Even Mike nodded silently, raising his beer in agreement. The funny thing is, the get fucked moment is now something we reference jokingly. Not to shame me, but as a sort of shared memory that reminds us we survived tension and came out stronger. I never thought I'd be able to laugh about it without feeling awkward or guilty. But I do. I also learned a lot about myself. I realized that I can't always fit into social expectations. And that's okay. I learned that boundaries aren't just words. They're actions, honesty and consistency. And most importantly, I learned that real friends will adapt, not abandon when you assert them respectfully. There's still work to do. I don't expect everything to magically be smooth forever. People slip, I slip, emotions flare, but now, I know we can communicate honestly without escalating into full-blown drama. And that's progress. Looking back, I wouldn't change my reaction. Saying get fucked might have been blunt. Maybe even a little rude, but it was honest. And honesty was what our friendships needed. It forced reflection, conversation, and ultimately growth. So yeah, I told my friends to get fucked. It was a messy, awkward, emotionally charged moment, but now, we're better because of it. Tighter in some ways, freer in others, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can show up in my friendships as me, without pretending, without guilt, and without fear. Sometimes the hardest conversations, the ones that make everyone uncomfortable, are the ones that save a relationship rather than destroy it. And in my case, that brutal honesty made all the difference. I think that's the takeaway. Don't be afraid to be honest with the people you care about. Even if it hurts at first, the right people will listen. And the friendships that survive, they'll be stronger than ever. Stories number 11. My neighbor keeps parking in my driveway, and it's driving me insane. I never thought a driveway could ruin my life, but here we are. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio. I've been in my house for about 6 years, and until recently things were peaceful. My neighbor, Denise, moved in a few years after me. At first, she seemed nice, waved occasionally, smiled at the mailbox. Small talk about the weather, nothing alarming. The problem started about 6 months ago. Denise began parking her car in my driveway. Not often. At first, maybe once or twice a week. But she always said it was just for a few minutes. That phrase quickly became the most infuriating words in the English language. At first, I let it slide. I figured maybe she had deliveries or guests. And hey, I can be flexible. My driveway isn't huge, but there's space for 2 cars, and her car would usually fit without blocking mine. Then it escalated. She started leaving her car there for longer than a few minutes. Sometimes 30, sometimes an hour. Occasionally, she'd even leave it while she ran into her own house. I tried subtle hints at first, leaving a note that said, "Please don't park in my driveway." But she'd call me up or come to the door, flustered, saying, "Oh, it's just a few minutes. I won't be long," and storm off with this sense of righteous indignation. I tried to be polite, tried explaining that it made it hard for me to get my car in and out, that I sometimes had early appointments, deliveries, or friends visiting. She waved it off. "It's only for a few minutes," she said every time, like repeating it enough made it true. The breaking point was last Thursday. I had a client coming to my house for a small consultation. I work from home. and I went outside to move my car, only to find Denise's SUV blocking the entire driveway. She was on the phone, waving her hand at me and saying, "I just need 5 more minutes." 5 minutes turned into 45. I ended up having to cancel the appointment, which hurt me financially and professionally. I was furious. And I finally snapped. I went over to her house and told her, calmly but firmly, that I needed her to stop parking in my driveway. She lost it. She started yelling, saying I was being unreasonable, that I was making a big deal over nothing, that she doesn't even have anywhere else to park. Then she said the kicker. "It's not like I'm living here. I'm just visiting." "You're being the jerk for treating a neighbor this way." I tried to explain again that it doesn't matter whether she's just visiting or living here. It's my property. She doesn't have the right to block it whenever she wants, and it's a matter of respect and consideration. She huffed and slammed her door in my face. Since then, things have been icy. She glares whenever she sees me outside. I've considered putting up a sign, "Private driveway, do not park." But I don't want to escalate it further. I thought about calling the HOA, but our neighborhood doesn't have strict parking rules, and I'd rather resolve it myself. I've talked to a few other neighbors, and while they sympathize, they all say I should just let it slide, or try to be the bigger person. I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's my driveway, my property, and my time being disrespected. But every time I try to set a boundary, Denise flips it around and acts like I'm the unreasonable one. I don't want a feud, and I don't want to escalate things into something ugly, but I also can't keep letting her walk all over me. I feel trapped. Every time I go outside, I'm waiting for the next time she'll park there. My own home, which used to feel like a sanctuary, now stresses me out. So Reddit, I need to know, am I the jerk for asking her to stop parking in my driveway, even though she says it's just for a few minutes? Update, I didn't expect this situation to drag on, but here we are, and honestly, it's been exhausting. Things with Denise haven't exactly improved. If anything, they've gotten worse in subtle, passive-aggressive ways. After my last post, I tried a few strategies. I left another polite note on her car. "Please don't park in my driveway. It blocks my access and causes stress. Thank you." She ripped it up the next day and stuck it back on my windshield with a scribbled "whatever" in marker. I thought about putting up a small sign, but worried it would escalate things further. Instead, I tried talking to her again. That conversation didn't go well. I walked over one evening while she was outside watering her plants and said, "Denise, can we talk? I need you to respect my driveway." She immediately crossed her arms and said, "Seriously? You're still harping on this?" "It's just for a few minutes. I don't even park here all the time," I explained calmly. "It's not about the few minutes. It's about respecting boundaries. Every time your car is in my driveway, I feel like I'm not in control of my own home." Her response? "You're being ridiculous. I've been parking here for months and never caused a real problem until now. Maybe you just have too much free time to stress about little things." Then she walked inside without another word. That stung. Not because she disagreed with me, I expected that, but because she completely dismissed how this made me feel. It's like she believes the "just a few minutes" line automatically excuses her behavior. I started questioning myself for a while, wondering if I was overreacting. Maybe she really didn't realize it bothered me that much. But then, I remembered last week, when she parked there for 2 hours while she had lunch with a friend. I couldn't get my car out to pick up a delivery, and I ended up being late and embarrassed. That reminded me why I was right to stand my ground. Since then, I've started documenting everything. Dates, times, how long her car was in my driveway, and what the impact was. I even took pictures once when she left her SUV there for nearly 3 hours while I was stuck. My plan is to show her evidence if I need to escalate things. HOA, city parking enforcement, or even small claims court if it comes to that. I hate the idea, but I feel like I need a backup. Interestingly, a few other neighbors have gotten involved in small ways. One of them, Mark, stopped by after noticing me arguing with Denise one morning. He said, "Honestly, if it were me, I'd be frustrated too." "You're not asking for much." Another neighbor, Rachel, told me that she's seen Denise park in other people's driveways before. So apparently it's not just me despite all this. I've tried keeping my interactions civil. I smile when I see her. I wave. I nod politely. But she doesn't return it anymore. I can feel her tension every time I step outside. It's exhausting to live in the same neighborhood and feel this constant strain. The stress has started creeping into other parts of my life too. I catch myself planning my schedule around the possibility that she'll park in my driveway. I've even started locking my car in place just to avoid being blocked in. something I never imagined I'd do in my own home. The bottom line is, I feel like I've done everything I can to be reasonable. I've tried talking politely, I've left notes, I've explained why it matters, and yet, every time she does it, it's the same line. Just a few minutes. She treats it like my feelings are irrelevant. I'm starting to realize that being polite might not be enough at some point. I might need to escalate. Either involve the HOA or get an official sign installed. I really don't want to do that. But I also can't keep letting her disregard me and my property. Reddit? I thought I was just being oversensitive at first. I thought maybe I was the jerk here. But after months of this, and after seeing how much control she's tried to take over my property, I'm starting to feel like I'm justified, maybe even overdue, in protecting my home. The only problem is, I hate the thought of this turning into a full-blown feud. I'd rather it stop peacefully, but at this point, I'm realizing that might not happen without some concrete boundaries being set. Final update. It's been a year since I first posted about Denise in the driveway, and honestly, I never thought it would drag on this long, but here we are. And while it hasn't been easy, I finally feel like things are settling. Mostly in my favor, thankfully. After months of trying to reason with her and leaving notes that went ignored or mocked, I finally decided to take more concrete action. I called the city non-emergency line to ask about residential driveway enforcement. Turns out, even though our neighborhood doesn't have strict HOA rules about driveways, the city treats them as private property. If someone is blocking access, that's technically trespassing. That was the push I needed. I printed out a formal letter, stating that my driveway is private property and that continued unauthorized parking could lead to enforcement action. I slid it under her door one Saturday morning. I won't lie, I was nervous, I wasn't trying to escalate things, but I needed to set boundaries she clearly wouldn't respect otherwise. At first, I didn't hear anything. I half expected her to blow up at me, but then, nothing. For a week, her car didn't show up in my driveway at all. Then it came back, not to block me, but parked neatly to the side, fully in her own property. I realized in that moment that she had finally understood the message. Without me having to yell, without a confrontation, without turning the whole neighborhood against her. Over the next few months, our interactions softened. She still gave me side glances, and her just a few minutes tone hasn't completely disappeared when we talk. But she hasn't parked in my driveway since the letter. She stopped trying to push boundaries. I even caught her holding the door for me one day as I left. A small gesture, but enough to know the dynamic had shifted. Honestly, I feel a huge weight lifted. My driveway is mine again. My car is accessible whenever I need it, and my stress levels have dropped considerably. I don't plan my day around whether she'll be there anymore. I can finally go outside without bracing myself for passive-aggressive stares. Living next to her hasn't turned into a nightmare either. We're still not friends. I don't expect that. But we coexist without constant tension. She's still Denise, opinionated and a little stubborn. But she's learned that there are limits, and I've learned that sometimes being firm is the only way to maintain peace. This whole experience has taught me a lot about boundaries, assertiveness, and standing up for myself. I hated being the jerk in my own head, worrying that I was overreacting or making a big deal out of nothing. But now I see that respecting my property and my time isn't just reasonable. It's necessary, and sometimes people need a clear line drawn before they understand it. It's strange to think back to those early interactions. The notes, the polite requests, the just a few minutes lies, and realize how much patience it took to finally get to this point. I wish it hadn't been so stressful. But at least now my home feels like my home again. I'm writing this update mainly to say, if you're in a similar situation, don't doubt your feelings. Don't let someone else's casual disregard make you question your own rights or your sanity. Set boundaries, be firm, and don't apologize for protecting your space. You might not get a thank you or a handshake, but eventually, most people respond when you make your line clear. So, yes, I asked my neighbor to stop parking in my driveway, and yes, it took months and a formal letter to finally get her to respect that. But in the end, it worked, and I've never felt better about standing my ground. Stories number 12. My shirt has been my daughter's birthday tradition for 17 years, and I just realized I don't even know who gave it to me. I have a little ritual every year on my daughter's birthday for the past 17 years. I've worn the same shirt, bright blue with tiny yellow stars, slightly faded at the collar, and now with a few small holes near the hem that I swear just appeared out of nowhere. I bought it, or maybe someone gave it to me. I honestly can't remember anymore. All I know is that it's become this weirdly sacred part of her birthday. Her name is Madison. She turned 17 this year, and if I'm being honest, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that number. I remember holding her in the hospital like it was yesterday, wearing that same shirt, thinking about all the birthdays I'd get to spend with her. From that first birthday in the tiny apartment we had when she was born, to our big celebrations now in our house with the backyard pool. The shirt has always been there this year. As we were decorating the living room and hanging up streamers, Madison stopped mid-hang and stared at me. "Dad, are you wearing that shirt again?" she asked. I laughed and said, "Of course, tradition." She shook her head, a smile on her face. "You've been doing this every year, huh?" I realized she probably had a point. I hadn't thought about how many times I'd worn this shirt. Once I did the math, it hit me. 17 birthdays, 17 times, without fail, no matter what else I had going on, no matter how bad the laundry situation. That shirt had been with me after the cake and presents. She grabbed my hand and said, "Dad, I have to ask, who gave you this shirt? Or did you just pick it out yourself?" I froze. I didn't know, I thought back. Did I buy it when I found out she was pregnant? Did my mom buy it for me as a weird, "you're gonna be a dad" thing? Did Madison's mom get it for me? I honestly had no idea. I just knew that at some point, it became the birthday shirt. Madison looked at me with wide eyes. "You've worn it every year for me. I always assumed it was some kind of magical dad gift. And you don't even know where it came from?" I laughed nervously and said, "Guess I never really thought about it. It just felt right." She didn't seem mad. In fact, she seemed fascinated. She dug through the drawers in my room after the party and finally found a little tag inside the shirt that had my initials embroidered on it. I must have done it myself. Maybe when she was born, or maybe before. As a silly dad brag thing, I honestly can't remember. We laughed about it for hours. I told her that every year. I feel like wearing this shirt is a way to tell her, without words, that I'll always show up for her birthdays. That even if everything else in life is messy, this one little ritual stays consistent. She hugged me tight and said, "That's the best gift, Dad. You don't need magic, just you." I guess that's what the shirt became. Not about who gave it to me or why, but about the memories tied to it, the tradition, and the fact that after 17 years, I'm still excited to put it on, see her face light up, and celebrate her. And honestly, I'm not sure I'll ever stop wearing it. It's been a few weeks since Madison's birthday, and I keep thinking about that moment when she asked me where the shirt came from. It's funny how a simple question can make you stop and reassess a tradition you've taken for granted for nearly 2 decades. I started digging through old boxes, looking for receipts, tags, anything that would tell me how this shirt came into my life. I found old photos of her first birthday, cradled in my arms, and yep, there it was. Bright blue, yellow stars, looking a little newer than now, but unmistakably the same shirt. I flipped through the photos from every birthday since then, and each time there it was, me in that same shirt, standing awkwardly with a cake in front of her, smiling like I had all the answers. I realized something else too. The shirt isn't just a shirt, it's a timeline. Each stain, each fade, each small tear marks a year of our lives. The spaghetti sauce from her 5th birthday, the coffee spill from last year's morning breakfast, the small tear from the time she hugged me so tight she nearly ripped it. I've been so focused on her growing up that I hadn't considered how much the shirt had grown old with us. A few days ago, I found myself talking to her about it. I told her that I didn't know exactly where it came from, that I might have bought it, that maybe my mom had given it to me, but what mattered is that it became part of our story. Madison rolled her eyes and laughed, saying, "Dad, it's weird how something so ordinary can mean so much, but that's you. You make ordinary things feel important." She's right. I think that's why I've held on to it for 17 years. Every birthday, putting it on feels like a quiet promise. No matter how big she gets, how messy life gets, how fast the world moves, I'm here, I show up, she sees it, even if she doesn't say it every year. I also realized that maybe the shirt has become a bridge for us. There are moments when we argue or get frustrated with each other, as teenagers and parents sometimes do, but then, when it's her birthday, and I put the shirt on, all that fades for a few hours. We laugh, we celebrate. We remember that underneath all the chaos, there's this simple ritual that connects us. I've started thinking about what happens when she goes off to college next year. Will I still wear it? I think I will. It might be just me, alone in that shirt, but I'll probably wear it anyway, because it will remind me of her, of us, and of every birthday we've celebrated together. Maybe I'll even pass it on, though knowing me, I'd probably keep it forever. Last night, Madison came into my room, picked up the shirt from the chair where I'd left it and held it up to her face. She said, "I can't believe you've worn this every single year for me. I mean, who does that?" I shrugged, smiling. "Apparently your dad does." She laughed, then hugged me tightly. "Thanks, Dad. Seriously. You make me feel like I'm the most important person in the world every year." And in that moment, I realized that maybe the origin of the shirt doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter who gave it to me, or why, or where it came from. What matters is what it became, a symbol of consistency, love and presence in a world that's constantly changing. I don't think I'll ever stop wearing it on her birthday. Not for anyone, not for tradition, not for nostalgia, just for her. Because after 17 years, it's more than fabric and stitching. It's a piece of our story, and I plan on keeping it alive as long as I can. It's been a full year since Madison turned 17, and as I write this, I'm already thinking about her 18th birthday. I can't believe how fast time flies. That shirt, which once felt just like a silly ritual, has become something much more meaningful, almost sacred in its own way. Over the last year, I've thought a lot about why I kept wearing it. At first I thought it was about making her happy, showing her that her birthday was special. But the more I reflect, the more I realize it's also about me. That shirt has witnessed the entire arc of her childhood, the messy first birthday, the middle school drama years, her awkward teen stages, and now the verge of adulthood. Every stain, every faded star, every tiny tear carries memories of her growing up, and me growing with her. A few months ago, I went through the old boxes again, looking for anything that could shed light on who gave me the shirt. I found an old gift receipt tucked inside a birthday card from my mom, dated the week before Madison was born. I think she bought it for me as a dad gift, a silly little gesture to celebrate the new chapter we were stepping into. It didn't matter that I didn't remember at first. Knowing now somehow made the shirt feel even more special. It's a bridge between generations, between her mom, my mom Madison, and me. I wore the shirt casually one evening, just sitting with Madison. Not for her birthday, just because. She noticed immediately and asked, "Dad, why are you wearing that now?" I shrugged and said, "Just felt like it." She laughed and said, "I don't know why, but it makes me happy." That simple comment reminded me that the shirt isn't just about tradition. It's a symbol of connection. It's comfort, it's love made tangible. Her 18th birthday is coming up in a few weeks, and I'm already planning the ritual as usual, but I think this time it's going to feel different. She's on the brink of adulthood, about to step into her own life. And I know that soon the shirt won't be the center of her birthday the way it has been for so long. But that's okay. The point isn't the shirt itself. It's the years of presence, attention, and love it represents. I've started thinking about the future, too. Maybe I'll keep it and wear it every year, even when she's away at college. Just as a reminder to myself of how quickly life moves and how important it is to show up for the people you love. And maybe one day I'll pass it along to her or someone else in the family. Not because of the shirt itself, but because of what it has come to symbolize. Care, consistency, and small, meaningful gestures that say, "You matter." Looking back, I realize the lesson of that shirt isn't about material things. It's not even about birthdays. It's about showing up, being present, and creating memories that outlast any object. And while I may never have known at first who gave it to me, it doesn't matter. What matters is what it became, a quiet but steadfast part of our lives. On her next birthday, I'll wear it again. Maybe I'll take a picture with her, maybe not. What I know for certain is that for 18 years, that shirt has been more than just fabric. It's our story stitched into cotton, worn with love, year after year, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.